Hey guys and welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of What If Naruto Was in Justice League. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. Back in LA. Naruto was usually not the one for nightmares, but he had been getting some of them lately and he did not like them one bit. The nightmares included dealing with some weird-looking beings that looked like those demons that he had dealt with in the past alongside Shion and his father Minato way back in the past. But they seemed to be attacking some other race, all of whom looked non-human to him. And there was a voice there somewhere, speaking in Japanese to him, yet having an accent that he could not place to what he had been able to learn while in this city. As the blonde shinobi looked at the coming dawn, he decided to go out on a routine patrol run in his regular garb, and as he got out, he decided to check the news and saw Superman once more. The blonde smirked a bit and went to eating something from the supplies he had been able to buy with the money that he was getting from his editor. He was pleased that his story was beginning to get off the prototyping bit and was soon going to be seen in action, and he was hoping that would do all right. The story of his life was very much the same as his previous experiences. The only key difference was that he altered his appearance to resemble the image he had of himself with his mother Kushina's hair and had it at the same style as his father with blonde highlights at the tips. An odd image to be sure, but was not all that bad, and the editor thought the same since the image added some uniqueness to the character. The only thing he did not change was his name, since he never used his real name that much out in public anyway, so he doubted that anyone made the connection just yet. He also made sure to be faithful to the story of his life and used all the events, even the ones he preferred personally, to remain buried. They were painful memories, but they all made him into who he was right now, and denying them was a bad move on his part. As he got his food ready, which was ramen which he had bought in a shop before, and sat down to eat, he listened to the news of Superman and then heard some people who were not too keen on him, speaking about the time he was used by that alien warlord to invade Earth. Naruto sighed a bit and merely listened as he began to chow down on the ramen that he had. He thought about his reason of not spilling the beans as it was said on Superman's identity and knew that it was the right one. The fact was that Superman reminded him of what he was like when he was struggling to prove that he was not Kurama, the demon fox who destroyed Konoha and killed so many people when it was freed from his mother by that bastard Toby. It was never an easy thing since so many people were killed, including the parents of his father figure Iruka, and while his father figure never hated him, others were not as open-minded as he was. Apart from Iruka, it was only a handful of ninja and people who saw him as a human being and a soon-to-be hero of Konoha, while the rest did not. It was only after so many trials and his defeat of Nagato, and his defeat of Madara, Toby, and Sasuke did he prove that he was the hero his parents and loved ones saw him to be. In Superman's case, it was different in the sense that he had been seen as a hero first before being brainwashed by that alien warlord whose name still was hard to pronounce. And because of his actions under that being's influence, so many lives were lost, and now he had to prove to the world that they could trust him again. No doubt he had some supporters, with the staff of the Daily Planet being one of said supporters, and also that dark-haired woman Lois, who he had to admit was quite the eye-catcher. But as Naruto had experienced, it was not an easy road, and there would be times that he would be tempted to take a different path, but staying true to one's morals, beliefs, faith, and principles was the ultimate test when everyone else thought you were evil all along and not to be trusted. After all, he knew what that was like. He could easily become like what his friend Gaara had been when the now deceased Kazekage had been filled with such hatred and loathing of the world and all around it. He could have easily allowed Kurama to possess him and make all of Konoha suffer for what they had put him through when he and Kurama were still enemies. He could have easily given into hatred and despair as well, becoming the very monster so many in Konoha long ago despised. And he could very well have become like Nagato when his clansmen had suffered so many losses and had been further corrupted and manipulated by Toby in the past. It would have been so easy for him, but he did not. He firmly believed in the will of fire and his desire to prove that he was someone who was very much a member of Konoha. And he did it. He won and proved that no matter how dark things were, as long as one held true and kept his or her faith strong, and never shut out those who cared for them, they could win no matter the odds. This was the reason he was going to keep Superman's secret, since he had no doubt that he and Superman were the same in the sense of their desire to prove to others that they were not the bad guys, as it were. He, however, had no doubt that he would be questioned by either the man himself or by that blonde cousin of his at some point should she try and find out more about him. Trying to protect her cousin's identity was understandable to him as well. After all, Hiruzen did the same thing by using his mother's clan name to hide his relationship with his father after both his parents died, saving him from Kurama's last attack to slay him. His father Minato made many enemies, and if they learned of his existence, they would have never stopped hounding him to attack his father, even more so since Minato was now dead, since killing him would ensure that nothing would be left of his father's legacy. And only a select few in Konoha, and even fewer if none at all now outside of Konoha, knew of his mother Kushina's power as well as her clan lineage, which was why no one suspected a thing, with the marked exception of the Kumo ninja who tried to kidnap her when she was still young. And couple the unique chakra type of his mother along with her clan's unique vitality and life force, he would have been quite the tempting target in those days. Thankfully no one was the wiser of his unique bloodlines, as the Uzumaki clan were skilled in sealing jutsu. He did not doubt that even after the fall of their home, they were very efficient in destroying the records to prevent being hunted, and it was only through luck or through extensive hard work that anyone found anything related to his mother's clan. Let alone find any of his possible clansmen who might still be alive in the world. He placed the thoughts aside for now as he focused on his breakfast, and once that was polished off with a glass of milk, he went to his mission. He wore his original garb, but this time had his chunin vest on and both swords on his back for easy reach. He had no doubt that sooner or later, there was going to be some answers to his nightmares. The question in his mind was naturally if he was going to like the answers. Later. Naruto was moving about the city while keeping himself out of the sights of the people for now, since there was not much for him to work with. The cops were doing a good job and he would only get involved if it became too dangerous or they were not able to make it in time. He had to make sure to that he also kept his senjutsu senses on. Naturally he had to leave some of his kage bunshin in certain parts of the city in order to gather the nature chakra to keep his senjutsu mode fully powered. He had gotten so used to this form for years that he did this as a natural precaution, and it certainly helped him in this city. As he moved through the place unhindered with the aid of his wired kunai and his chakra chains, he was quick to sense something, or rather someone was in the area. And from what he could sense, the person in question was not human. He stopped from his movements on a roof to focus his senjutsu sensed and looked in the direction where the signal was coming from. And he was quick to sense just who it was that was coming his way. It was a signature that he had sensed before in Metropolis, and it was not Superman, but Supergirl, and he had a very good idea as to why she was here LA and not at Metropolis with her cousin. He waited a bit more until he sensed her speed up. No doubt she finally saw him and was heading his way. He turned and spotted one of those helicopters that he had read about and decided to get out of the area to avoid having the media follow him. He had no doubt that Supergirl was going to be following him, so he headed off to the highest building there and hoped no one he had no ties to decided to follow him and Supergirl. He quickly fired out one of his wired kunai and soon moved out, reinforcing the kunai wire with his chakra to reinforce it. He was not wrong in his assumptions, as he was now being followed by the blonde superheroine, and soon they reached his target. Naruto managed to land on the roof, quickly used a genjutsu as Supergirl was within the area behind the genjutsu and he released it. The genjutsu was not one of his best, but it would do as it made the area outside of the said genjutsu appear all the same to anyone looking at it from the outside. As soon as he did so, he relaxed himself and turned just as Kara landed in front of him. She looked at him seriously and he could tell that the blonde heroine was not in the best of moods. He decided to come out a bit more serious than before, as being a smart ass was a course of action had gotten him into more trouble that cared to have, even more so since she no doubt had the strength to equal Tsunade and Sakura. He decided to get things rolling as it were as he spoke to Kara. All right Supergirl, what's the reason you came all the way here to LA to find me? Kara crossed her arms and replied. It's pretty simple, how did you know about my cousin's other identity? Naruto raised an eyebrow and replied a bit to that, thankful that he still had his mask on. It was not some simple event, mind you, I just got lucky and curious. That did not sit too well with the young alien woman as she replied. You got lucky and curious. Look here, I want you to stop playing games with me. How did you know and what do you plan to do about it? Naruto could not blame Supergirl from not being convinced and he replied. I plan to do nothing. I gave my word that I will not reveal his identity to him, and I did for the past many weeks. If I did not want to keep my word, I would have revealed it long ago, so I don't really see why you should worry about anything right now. Kara was not all that relaxed, but she did admit that he had a point. He had ample time ever since Metropolis to reveal to the world that Clark Kent was Superman, but he had not done so at all. She did not like it and went there to find him and figure out just what he did to figure out Clark's secret. I have a right to worry. My cousins already. I know about that whole Darkseid incident, Supergirl, since despite the fact I look like a teenager, I do read the newspapers. I know that he does what he can to earn the trust of the people once more, to prove that he is not the enemy, even though a lot of people think that he cannot be trusted. And I respect that, since in a way, I went through the same thing he is now. What does that mean? Kara looked at Naruto, who was still wearing his mask even though she could see right through it. She was not as experienced as her cousin was, but there was a part of her stating that he might not be lying to her. But she was not going to just let it lie. How could he say that he went through the same thing that Clark did? Unless. Are you an alien like me and my cousin? Naruto shook his head at that. Nope, I am a human, but not your average human. So you're a meta-human then? You could say that, and the abilities you saw me use from before are indeed part of me and what I have been training with for a while. But I am already being honest with you, Supergirl. I have no intention to reveal your cousin's true identity, nor do I plan to profit from it as well. Besides, any evidence I had before, I already destroyed before I even spoke to your cousin when we met. And like I said, I went through something similar to your cousin's struggles, so I know what it's like to try and win trust from others as well as prove that you are not the enemy even when everyone sees you as an enemy, or worse. Naruto then turned to look at the city and sighed a bit as he carried on. Suffice to say that it's not the same in every respect to what he is going through right now, but the situation and struggle is the same. That's why I have no plans to reveal what I know about him. After all, being a ninja is to keep secrets, even though when I was younger, I was no too good with secrets myself. And besides, if I did reveal the secret, there's no doubt in my mind that everyone who has an axe to grind will come after him and endanger people precious to him, right? He saw Kara tense just a tiny bit, but that was enough to convince Naruto he had hit a nerve. That meant that Clark did have important people in his life, Lois naturally being one of them, so if his dual identity came out, every criminal he had ever royally pissed off would be gunning for her to get to him. He then turned to Supergirl and then took off his mask, revealing his face to her, and he spoke. To prove that I am serious, I will tell you my name, so now I want to see if you can keep a secret. That secret is naturally mine. Kara was silent at this and nodded a bit. Naruto decided to tell her some things about himself, but not too much since he was not going to reveal everything just like that. My name is Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. I know it's a long name by your world standard, but it's mine and I am proud of it. It has a lot of meaning to me, so I carry it with pride. And while I might be speaking to you in English, suffice to say that it's not my original language. Really? So what's your natural language? The one you might know as Japanese. Kara looked at him and was a bit confused. By all rights, this Naruto guy looked like an American unless he grew up in Japan and just arrived in the US to settle down. You're an American who grew up in Japan then? Not exactly. I'm not from Japan or anywhere else for that matter. I am from another dimension. I got sent here in this world in a very unexpected fashion from where I actually came from. Now, if she was a normal person who grew up in a normal lifestyle and family, Kara Kent would have called Naruto nuts and suggested he go to a doctor to see if he was not suffering from either getting hit on the head, or taking too much of something. Or he was delusional and was trying to fool himself and her with a warped sense of reality. But she was not a regular teenager, and she was not a normal human girl. She was from another planet far away from Earth and had powers no normal person would have. That was why Kara did not freak out too much as she nodded to him to say that she was following him so far. Where I come from, we don't have the level of tech that this world has, nor do we happen to have people from other worlds like you and your cousin. I know this because I was able to sense his chakra when I met him, and I also sensed yours when you came here to look for me. Chakra. That sounds like one of those ancient beliefs that exist here. To you it's just words on paper and beliefs from others, but where I come from, chakra is very real and it serves as the foundation of all the techniques I use. You see, in our world chakra is present in everyone, and those who undergo the training can do very surprising things such as walk on water, climb walls or trees, unleash attacks that are elemental in nature, enhance their speed and strength, and so on. I'm naturally one of them and I am a ninja. In fact, most of the users of chakra are either those who have very unique roles in society, serve in the military, or are ninja, both those aligned with a village as it were, or mercenaries. So that means you've been trained as an assassin. Yeah, and I have killed before, but the ones I personally killed were powerful criminal ninja. One of them actually started a war that claimed a lot of lives. He was even the one who played a part in my parents' deaths. That got Kara's attention quickly as she saw the look that Naruto gave out at the mention of it. The expression was rather solemn, and despite her youth, Kara did get some lessons from Barbara on how to tell if someone was telling the truth or pulling her by the nose with a lie. Naruto was not lying to her, and she replied to that. I see. Sorry about that. You have my sympathies. Thanks, but I managed to mend fences about it, and let's just say YHAT my parents had found a way to speak to me one last time. I'm not all that sure with how they did it, but I was happy to have seen them one last time. As to how I got here, I was on a mission that was to save my home from an attack. I and those who accompanied me managed to foil it, but I got caught in the whole event. I should have died actually, but I came here and so I decided to try and get used to this place and try to fit in. So you're doing this hero thing for what reason? To help people, obviously. Unlike what you hear about ninja, not all of them are mercenaries and killers for hire. At least in my world, and some exceptions here in this one as well, and you could say that the only time we ever kill a person or a group of people where I was from is when it was needed or unavoidable. I don't mess around with the cops though. If they are there and can deal with it, I'll only help out and not try to act like I am doing a better job than them. They risk their lives every day from what I have seen thus far. Sure, they do have their share of corrupt nuts, but they are not all bad and I respect that a lot. Besides, I have the ability to do these things, so I will use them for a good cause. I mean, considering the things I can do, I could easily have been a thief or more, but I guess being a hero is something that I want to be, and the fact that my parents always believed that I was born to be a hero where I really came from adds to that. I did become a hero in my world, and so it's part of my nature to do the same here. Anyway, I was on a mission with a few other ninja, high-ranking ones to stop a band of rogues who were planning to launch an attack on our home. We managed to stop them, but they unleashed the weapon they were hiding and aimed it at the village. I managed to stop it, and by all rights the technique I used saved it, but it would kill me as well. But I came here, alive obviously, and with all my parts in working order. It took a while before Kara decided that she learned enough to be more relaxed. She had a feeling that he hid some things from her when they were talking to one another, but she had a feeling that it was for a reason. And from what she learned, it was a very good reason, and to add to that, Naruto seemed to be very tight-lipped about it, and he was showing the aura of the kind of person who did not react well to being forced to say something he did not want to say. She could have tried the more physical approach of getting the answers she needed, but decided against it, not only because Clark would not have approved, but because the guy had an aura of being, well, warm and safe to be around. A weird feeling, but not in a bad way, and as such, fighting him was not a good idea. Besides, the fact that he had told her something himself willingly showed to her that he was doing his best to give a good impression. It kind of reminded her of the time Clark had revealed his story to Lois way before she ever came to the picture, though Naruto apparently preferred to keep secrets. And if she recalled what ninjas did, then it was something to be expected of them, further cementing the facts to her that there might be some truth to his words. As soon as it was over, she decided to sum it up. So let me see if I get this right. You're a ninja from another dimension who had no idea how you got here in ours, since you should have actually died from whatever mission you were in. You have these abilities because of your chakra, and you are using them here to help people. That pretty much sums it up. And yes, I know that I am possibly holding some things back, but I have my reasons. Well, let's hope those reasons don't come back and haunt not just you but all of us as well. Now I am going to go back to Metropolis, but bet on the fact that if I hear anything that might put my cousin in danger and those we care about, I am coming back for you. Naruto then decided to have a little fun and replied. Sure, I'll make sure to dress nice for it too. Kara gave a slight smirk and soon left, making Naruto relax a bit more as he decided to put off the genjutsu and head off to do the routine patrol thing once more. This time with his mask on and him swinging on the chakra chains that he used on occasion. This was also the time that Kurama decided to get involved with the results of his conversation with Supergirl. You know, Naruto, it seems to me that we are going to be under observation soon by that girl. She's welcome to it any time, though I have been curious about those dreams I have been having. Well, I can say this much, those dreams were not yours in the slightest, someone sent them into your head and mine. That got Naruto's attention as he moved to the roof of another building, ran over the same roof, and then leapt off to fly down and fire another chakra chain that looped around a nearby flagpole and allowed him to swing over to the next building. Are you telling me that someone tried to send me dreams? Literally tried to hijack my dreams? That sounds weird, Kurama, even for you. Ever had moments that seemed off at times in your life? Just like the time that glass of yours cracked a bit to tell you that Hinata-san was going to give birth to your firstborn daughter and you were on the other side of the village. Well, if there's one thing that can tell you, what sounds bogus to you might have some truth in it. Remember, we're in a world with super-powered beings, and we just had a chat with a being that looked like a human but has powers that many could only dream of happening. And let's not forget you and me either. Okay, point taken, so you're saying that someone is sending us a message in dream form. Yeah, still out on who or what is sending them, but after what I had managed to decipher with what that force sent unexpectedly into my head along with your own, I think I can guess what it might be. Mind you, this is merely a guess, not a full-blown certainty. That being what? A warning, Naruto. If you recall what you can of your dreams, the figures that looked like demons were chasing other non-human beings and hunting them. Then we saw fire and destruction along with voice saying, they are coming. I am willing to wager a guess that the ones that are coming are the ones that hunted the other non-humans. You don't need to be a genius to know that if they are coming here, the same thing's going to happen to everyone on this dimension. Naruto frowned as he got on the top of a building's water tower and spoke one more time to his longtime partner. So it's a warning. Wager a guess we're not the only ones getting this, Kurama. Nope. If it's as bad as those dreams suggest, there's bound to be others who got the dream too. Wager a guess one such person would be Superman. I guess that we're going to have to go there to Metropolis again and stake things out a bit. Naruto nodded and then spotted what appeared to be another hostage situation, only this time it was in a very large building, and as he used his senjutsu senses, he found at least 12 people all over the place in the building. And there was a larger amount of other chakra signatures as well. Judging by the pattern of the first batch, they were the hostage takers. Naruto quickly observed the situation and decided to intervene just a bit by lessening the numbers facing the cops. Plus there was a chance that they might be walking into a trap if the hostage takers had planned ahead. 2 days later, Naruto was quick to arrive at Metropolis after taking the time to try another route, and that was by sneaking into a passenger plane. As soon as the plane was opening its landing gear, Naruto leapt out, and as soon as he hit the ground safely with chakra enhancement on his bones and muscles on his legs, he quickly moved into the city. He had sent a message to his editor that he was going to be gone for at least a few days to tackle some personal matters, but not before sending the next script of his story to his editor. Once that was over, he snuck once more into a plane bound for Metropolis since going at it by train was a bad idea. Never go into the same land in the same way twice, as his sensei used to say, since there's always a chance someone would get wise to you. As soon as he was in the clear, he switched disguises once more, coloring his hair a deep black and then using his henge to hide his whisker marks. He was now dressed in the regular male fashions of blue t-shirt with white undershirt, gray pants and shoes. Not the exactly stylish, but normal looking as far as he was concerned. And as soon as he was away from the airport and away from security, he blended into the rest of the people going to and fro in the city streets. The incident in LA had been resolved when he took down a few of the hostage takers and left the rest for the police. The ones he had dealt with were not too bad, and when the police came in, they found the ones he had taken out tied up and stripped of their guns. Naruto had just left his calling card, a metal piece that looked like red flames with a black shadow background. Once that he was done, and moved around the city to see if there was any other matter that he had to deal with. Finding none, he decided to head back and pack what he needed to go to Metropolis and see if what Kurama and he suspected was right on the money. Besides, if it did not work out, he could always go up and have a bit of fun by saying hi to Superman and his cousin later on, as well as that dude Steel. And now here he was in Metropolis once more, and he was off to get himself a place to stay, though he decided a low-cost apartment was more in order to keep it simple. He went apartment hunting, and after half the day and a hearty lunch found a nice place in the western side of the city. It was only at $100 a month, and since he paid a full $500 for as long as he was there in the city, the owner was all right with it. He did not bring a lot of stuff, and since he had no deadline to worry about until next month, he did not bring his laptop and USBs and kept the two safe in his base back in LA. Setting himself in, he decided to operate now at night, no more moving about in daytime. He was a ninja after all, and while morning runs were all right with him, he decided early on that it was only in LA he was going to do this. Night over Metropolis. Naruto had waited for night to arrive and soon moved out, and while he wore his clothing, he was also making sure to stick to the shadows. Running over the rooftops and swinging away before anyone could see him, he soon moved to the Daily Planet and switched to using his senjutsu once more. That did not take long, as he soon felt the chakra signatures of the people inside. It was obvious that Superman was not inside the building, so he moved out, but not before leaving another cage bunchen to scan the area in another direction. Where is he? As he moved further to the city limits, he felt the faint trail of chakra that was uniquely Superman's and followed it as fast as he could. He made sure to be at high speed as the trail grew stronger and fresher, only to encounter another chakra signature he did not expect. It was not enough to slow him down as he moved through the trees and in the shadows, but it was enough to make him curious. That's Batman's chakra signature. That's unexpected. What is tall, dark, and brooding doing here in Metropolis? Guess we're about to find out. And find out the Jinchuriki and his Biju partner did as they arrived at a massive building that Naruto recognized as an observatory. And the said observatory was one of those so-called deep space models as well, judging by the sheer size of it. He had managed to read some of it when he studied the country he was in, dipping a bit into science. He never did understand the fascination people had for looking at the stars, and although he did it when he was deep in thought when he was younger. That train of thought ended when he spotted Superman on the top of the dish as he climbed up the nearest and highest tree away from the tree line. He could not see that well, but apparently Batman was pursuing three figures who might be a lot more dangerous than he expected since Superman was behind him. He looked on to see just how this was going to go down, but suddenly he spotted Superman suddenly begin to spasm somewhat and then fall down from the sky. And at that same time, both he and Kurama were suddenly hit by another series of vivid dreams. The blonde gritted his teeth in annoyance as Kurama growled a bit at the sudden mental assault as he spoke out. Damn it! When I find this mental hijacker, I am going to shove my fists down his ears and see how he likes it when something unwanted gets shoved in his head. Naruto agreed as he fought back the images and looked to the site, only to see the whole station suddenly go boom. He saw that Superman was still out of it as the three figures leapt away as both Batman and Superman were sent flying. He quickly recovered, jumped off the tree, landed easily on the ground and rushed to save both Batman and Superman as he leapt upward with his chakra helping increase his leaping ability and then fired both chakra chains at them. Batman spotted him and realized he was there to help. The chains caught both Batman and Superman as Naruto quickly yanked the two of them away from the heat and debris of the blast and then lowering them to the ground. Naruto was pleased at least the two heroes were unharmed as he laid the two of them safely. He turned to see the three figures who looked like they had just been sent into the blender. Yet he quickly saw them move and rearrange themselves back together, and the three of them smirked arrogantly at him and no doubt to Batman and Superman as well. Naruto glared at the three alien beings and he quickly walked towards them. The three smirked at the blonde, but that got them into trouble as Naruto suddenly faded from sight to appear right behind the woman and smashed a chakra-enhanced fist right into the gut. The blow was enough to surprise the three, as there was some serious power in said punch as the disguised female was sent rolling off and then slamming into the tree. The other aliens were briefly surprised by that, but that shock faded as they quickly attacked Naruto as he expected, but he did not survive for nearly a century to be caught flat-footed by anyone or anything. He blocked the kick aimed to his head while quickly flipping upwards and landing a chakra-reinforced heel kick on the chin of the second attacker as it was about to punch him. The attack sent the undeniably non-human foe back while Naruto quickly turned and smashed a knee into the face of his other attacker, and the strength actually sent the face contorting in a very unsightly fashion. He flipped back and replied, "You three might not be human, but that does not mean you are immune to getting your asses kicked. Come on, is that be the best you three bugs have?" The aliens were about to attack when the one Naruto knocked back shouted in the human language of English, "Enough. We must not waste time." The two got away, and as Naruto was about to follow them, Kurama spoke to him. "That could be a trap, Naruto. Let them get away for now. I get the feeling we can track them down later. For now, let's go greet the gang." Naruto nodded as he knew that despite their alien energy signatures, he could find them well enough later, so had to check on Batman. He turned to see that Batman seemed to be all right and Superman himself seemed to be up and about now. The blonde smiled behind his mask as he saw that Superman had indeed recovered, though the shocked look was a bit of a concern for him. He however spoke to both heroes in a friendly tone. "Nice to see you two again, even if the meeting is not exactly the kind one sets tea and biscuits for. Though I am curious as to why Batman's in Metropolis, since Gotham's usually your base of operations." Batman glared a bit and replied, "That's not really something you should be concerned with right now, Hokage." Naruto shook his head and replied, "That might change soon enough, Batman, if what I saw was any indication. By the way, Superman, had any interesting and vivid dreams lately?" Superman was quick to look at the Hokage, and he could not help feel that the only reason the Hokage would ask him that was if he had the same dreams too. The Hokage had indeed kept his word in not revealing his secrets for the past few months now, so he was in a more relaxed mood. He had a meeting with Kara when he found out that she had gone to Los Angeles, and while he was curious about the outcome, he was relieved that Kara had decided to let the matter of the Hokage knowing his identity be. He however suspected that Naruto had done something to convince Kara to finally let the matter be. He wanted to know what it was, but Kara was tight-lipped about it, not something he expected but decided to let lie. Besides, he had a feeling that there were more pressing matters to attend to. "You could say that. I take it the reason you came back here to Metropolis is that you had the same dreams too." "You got that right. My partner told me he suspects that those dreams were not ours, something or someone sent them to us." Superman and Batman raised an eyebrow to that, and Batman turned to Superman for confirmation. "You've been having dreams, Superman?" "Correct, and none of them were the least bit friendly. I can tell you both that I have a feeling that they are not mine. Your partner said that he suspects someone or something is sending you and me these dreams." "Yep. He also said that he thinks it's a warning. I'm not all that sure if it is a warning, and neither is he yet, but the fact that you had the same dreams as I did means I am not losing my marbles. So if it is a warning, it's pretty serious, and too much to ignore. This night's festivities tell me that the dreams and this attack might be connected." Batman had to admit that it made some sense. Those three scientists he had been fighting before were anything but human, and the device that he suspected now was some sort of bomb was proof of it. That was nothing like any known human technology, and certainly not the kind common criminals used, and certainly not the creation of any of his rogues gallery. He then spoke to Naruto as he wondered just who this partner of the Hokage was, since he was sure that Naruto usually operated alone. "What exactly made your partner suspect it was a warning?" "Because when I told him the dream, he knew immediately that it was not mine, and he suspected that someone or something sent it through me. I trust him since I worked with him for a very long time, and while he's hard to find by your means, he's not in mine." The two other heroes remained silent for a while, and Naruto could silently hear Kurama snorting a bit in triumph, and he could not help but expect that. Batman decided to speak to the two as he knew that if this was merely the beginning, then they would each have to be on guard. "If those three were part of it and these dreams are warnings, then we all have to get ready for anything. This is not the first time this happened actually. Several Wayne-Tech deep space observatories all over the world have been taken down already, but only after sending out very powerful and encrypted signals into deep space. And now I know by whom, or rather what. You do know what these places do, right, Hokage?" Naruto looked at Batman and replied in a slightly annoyed fashion. "Please, just because I don't exactly delve into this science stuff does not mean I don't know what they are for. The fact that these places were hit must mean something." Superman nodded in agreement. "He's got a point. You need any help in figuring this out, Batman?" "No need. I'll be able to handle this on my own. I've already got the key details in my hands." Superman sighed at that, but he decided to give both the Hokage and Batman communication watches as he moved out of the area. No doubt the fire department was coming, and as Batman turned to speak to Naruto, he found himself looking at thin air. The blonde had managed to escape his attention long before he even knew it, further reinforcing to Bruce that the blonde who looked like a teen was anything but a teen. And he also realized that he now felt what Gordon felt every time he decided to check out before he could finish. I wonder if Gordon ever thought of nailing my feet to the floor when I did that. In Gotham. ACHOOO. James Gordon was busy reading the news at his home, and that was something that did not happen often as Barbara came back into the kitchen carrying a dish filled with greens for a salad. Dad, are you coming down with a cold or something? No, I had the cold only 8 months ago, Barb. The situation in Metropolis was still very much the same as before the next day, as not many were aware of what was going on. Though Naruto was currently watching a large protest going on while still in henge to avoid being seen easily in the same disguise as before, though with a different wardrobe of white shirt, and brown pants with brown shoes. He had heard about these devices called nuclear weapons, and what he learned was enough to remind him of Hotaru, and the kinjutsu she had in her. This was similar, though it was done with stuff he could not even begin to guess. But there was no doubt the stuff was highly destructive, so he could not say he was against them rallying and protesting. He then watched in a television set in a diner while having lunch the recapping of the current meeting with the World Assembly, which reminded him of the council back home in Konoha. Only difference was that it had all the leaders of the world together, like the Cage Summit that he heard about from Gaara and May. The man named Senator Carter was one of the heroes of some expedition on another world called Mars, had appointed Superman to be the one to help defend Earth, and thus the need for nuclear weapons was over. The military naturally protested the whole thing, and Naruto could not entirely blame them for it. Having been Hokage for a number of years had taught him the value of having a strong armed force for defense and offense, even more so when protecting the peace he and so many fought long and hard for. He also felt that Superman's acceptance and actions was somewhat misguided. Itachi had told him long ago, when the brother of his best friend was brought back to life, that the reason his father Minato became Hokage was because the villagers acknowledged him. And he cared for the people as well as he did Kushina and him when he was born. Taking on the responsibility of saving and protecting the world as if it was your burden was a dangerous path in Itachi's mind, as he said that he could have very well been Madara had he forgotten that and his friends. Superman was powerful, but he was one hero and no one, not even the Man of Steel, can do everything by himself. That was why he had to agree with the hero named Flash that he had his doubts about the whole affair. However, he knew that he had his own matters to deal with, and he decided to see if he could find Batman if the Dark Knight was still doing his work in the city while he was here. As he walked out and headed to his apartment, he waited for night to come in and blanket the city. Night over Metropolis. Naruto used his senjutsu to try and locate the signature that he knew was associated to Batman and soon moved out in full disguise. He moved from rooftop to rooftop as he scanned the city. It was not long before he finally sensed Batman's chakra signature and began to track it. He soon arrived at one massive building that went by the name of Star Labs, which he had heard about in passing. He wondered just what brought the Dark Knight here until he spotted the very same disguised beings as before. He would have decided to take them on when he suddenly felt a fluctuation in Batman's chakra signature. He realized then that something bad was going down as he moved deep in the building. Only to see Batman knocked out and one of the ugliest looking dogs he had ever seen about to chomp on Batman. He quickly rushed in and launched a chakra-enhanced kick to the side of the creature. The creature roared in surprise as it turned to try and take off Naruto's head with a bite. Naruto quickly ducked and then launched himself upward with a knee to the lower form of the alien. The creature was sent back and Naruto quickly summoned another pair of Cage Bunshin. The third Cage Bunshin charged and kicked the creature in the lower jaw, and as soon as it poofed away as both Naruto and the Cage Bunshin attacked the alien as one force. Naruto growled as he and his Cage Bunshin quickly shoved an Odama Rasengan right into the mouth of said alien dog with a curse. Choke on this. Odama Rasengan. The sphere smashed into the alien creature, which roared in pain as the energy sphere wasted no time in ripping the creature literally in half. The creature soon died as Naruto was able to see that it was nothing but one major mess on the floor, along with splashes of the creature all over the walls and out at the back. One was for sure, if that monstrosity of a dog was still alive, he'd eat his forehead protector. Naruto turned to check on Batman and saw that he had pressed the watch Superman gave him a few days ago, so it was a promise that Superman was well on his way. That's only going to happen if that being who's been hijacking dreams decided not to do it to him mid-flight and send him crashing down like last time. Naruto ignored the jib and began to check on the unconscious hero. He did have a concussion plus a few sore muscles and possibly a cracked rib or two. Naruto was not a full-blown medic nin, but he was quick to guess that some serious patching up was in order. He summoned his chakra and began to use the healing jutsu he had been trained in by both Tsunade and Sakura, and his hands were now glowing with green energy. Batman began to breathe a bit better and Naruto could sense through his still active senjutsu senses that his body was recovering. It was here that Superman finally arrived and walked, or rather flew in. Naruto did not have to turn around to know that Superman was worried for Batman, and he replied, "Don't worry, I'm patching him up right now, Superman, but I think the real scientists are going to need some help after this." It was here that Batman finally recovered consciousness, and he was surprised since after getting himself tossed around by that alien creature, he just woke up and felt fine, better than fine. He looked to see that Superman and the Hokage was there, and Naruto was currently facing the original scientists and his hands were actually glowing in green energy. He raised his eyebrows and Superman replied. Hokage said he used a healing jutsu to patch you up, and now he is treating the scientists, how are you feeling? Batman grunted a bit and replied. I'll be fine. Though in truth he was quite impressed, he had undergone some mystical healing techniques before, but not one that was able to patch him up this fast. And as he looked briefly at Naruto, and the green energy in his hands, he could not help but feel that there was a lot of mystery yet to be answered with the blonde. He walked over to Naruto and spoke to him as the blonde moved his hand away from the last scientist. How are they? They'll live, but I doubt that they can remember anything prior to the whole kidnapping routine done to them. How about you? I'm not skilled medic nin since I don't use the technique all that much, so I hope you are feeling all right. I'll manage, but the help is appreciated. That was when a massive flaring light suddenly lit up the abandoned lab and soon all three heroes moved out to see a massive streaking rock come in. Naruto, who was still using his senjutsu senses, picked up something. It was faint, but it was there inside the massive celestial body. It was alive yet not at the same time, and it was not the least bit human. I think we've just gotten invaded. Naruto and the others were already moving out when Naruto's assessment of the situation came right on the money as the massive comet suddenly released a massive amount of smoke and gas. That release was soon followed by a massive leg that came out and nearly skewered a pair of officers that Superman saved. Then two more joined said limb and out came one of the ugliest things the blonde had ever seen. But that was soon changed by the sudden blast of energy the thing unleashed as it blew up a car, forcing Naruto to quickly save several people from the flying debris just as Superman decided to attack. Batman pulled back as he knew that no amount of weapons that he had was going to do him much good as he headed back to get to his plane. He had no idea if his machine's weapons were going to work, but he knew that he did not have a whole lot of options. As for Naruto, he quickly turned to see Superman suddenly being blasted backwards by a massive beam like he was nothing. He heard Superman scream in pain as he decided to fight back. He took out a scroll, unwrapped it and quickly summoned out a whole row of at least 100 kunai with explosive tags. He learned enough on how to make explosive tags on his own, and these were armed with enough explosive force to shatter a stone wall and were boosted somewhat by his chakra. It was unknown to him if they were going to be enough to harm, but they were going to have to do for now in order to keep the alien walker away from harming the people. The explosions forced the alien walker to focus on Naruto, and the blonde quickly moved out of the way as a beam was fired in his direction. He evaded the attack and quickly saved a pair of civilians from the debris as he quickly began to summon more of his explosive tag kunai and even took out a massive Fuma shuriken with explosive tags. The people gaped at the massive bladed weapon briefly as Naruto tossed it at the walker and it exploded once more. This time it had some results as some of the alien's armor was shorn off. Superman soon returned and so did Batman in his fighter, and they began to pour it on the aliens, but they were not doing well enough as more meteors fell and soon more of the alien machines came in the field. Naruto was annoyed by this and began to think that summoning Kurama was a better move than just sticking to what he was using right now. But that was taken out of the equation when the walker began to fire at him and charge at the same time. That combined attack soon sent Naruto running into a building just as the alien walker decided to smash the roof and the rest of the wall, with the intent of burying Naruto in the rubble. Superman saw that and was shocked as he tried to reach Naruto but was soon blasted once more by a blast of memories. One of the nearby reporters came in to try and help Superman, who recovered, and then told the reporter that he had to deal with something and soon left. That was not unnoticed by everyone, and soon the people were in a panic as they had thought that Superman had turned tail and ran. Batman, on the other hand, was not easily convinced and soon turned his attention to following Clark. There had to be a reason on why was it that Clark would do that, and he had every intention of finding out what that reason was. Back in the ruins. Damn, that was close. Naruto shouted out a bit as he quickly pushed off the slab of concrete that had covered the place. He had managed to get into cover after that giant thing tried to turn him into powder as well as bury him. As soon as the slab was clear, he got out and coughed away the dust and dirt, as well as wiping his hair and clothes clean. He then looked about and spotted the thing walking away and turned his attention to the nearby reporter who seemed to be recovering as he was. He quickly got over to the man and was happy that his chakra-enhanced mask was still whole to hide his face as he spoke to man. Where the heck are Superman and Batman? The reporter was surprised to see Naruto alive after what happened and pointed at a direction from Metropolis. They took off in that direction. Why the heck did they leave? We need them here to stop these invaders. They must have left for a reason, to look for something or someone, I think. Listen, you've got to get out of here and get as many people as you can to safety. What about you? I'm going to go and try to track down those two and find out what's so important that they left. But first, I have to help out the cops. Naruto quickly took off in another direction as he spotted some police officers trying to fire back at one of the machines, but their weapons were not doing much good. The bullets seemed to either bounce off like they were rubber or did not even bite deep into the fleshly-looking white and black armor of the creatures. Naruto quickly used his senjutsu senses and could tell that these things were definitely not living beings. They were more like machines, like giant versions of dolls, and some odd memory he had recalled a few times before in his younger years. He placed that aside as he saw the police run back as the thing turned and fired at the area before them, apparently to weaken the group and then finish them off. The thing began to aim at them and Naruto was quick to react as he grabbed a nearby car. Using his chakra-enhanced strength he tossed the vehicle just as the beam fired. The beam hit the vehicle. Naruto turned into an impromptu missile and exploded and managed to take the brunt of the beam and allow the cops to move away. The alien walker turned towards Naruto as he quickly moved to create a trio of Cage Bunshin and soon made his Rasenshuriken. The alien fired the beam as Naruto tossed the chakra sphere with nature transformation at him. The beam missed the sphere and the projectile made by Naruto's chakra managed to slam hard into the side of the alien walker. The impact was enough to tear a chunk off the alien walker, but it was still intact as Naruto seemed to be consumed by the blast of fire as the ruined vehicle fell down in two different pieces on the street. But the walker was not able to dodge in time as Naruto had actually used one of his father's kunai to move the side of the building nearby, right in the level of the thing's eye cannon. Naruto quickly charged in and unleashed a powerful Rasenshuriken right into the face of the alien walker before it could fire. The result was a massive tearing sound as the front of the alien walker was destroyed and soon fell down to the ground in a ruined heap. Naruto landed back down and moved to the police who were impressed by what had happened. He saw that some of them were wounded and he knew that he had to use some of the training he got in medical jutsu even if he was tired. However, a band of medical personnel appeared and he helped them take the wounded away as one of the cops, an older officer, spoke. Thanks for the help, Hokage, but I think we're going to need more than just you. Why the heck did Superman and Batman leave? They must be looking for allies to fight them. Even if he is Superman and he is Batman, they are not going to do this alone. Why, you got a point, but who else is going to help? I don't know, but I am going to find them. You guys don't give up, all right? No worries, kid. This old dog still got some sharp teeth, and when that alien warlord came here, the Metropolis police held their own, so we are not going to let these alien bastards take our world without a fight. Naruto smiled at that as he focused his chakra once more to try and locate both Batman and Superman. He was happy that his second Cage Bunshin had lasted long enough to send him the Senjutsu chakra, and soon he was off, trying to track down Superman's unique chakra signature, and there was a faint trail of the stuff as well, so while it was going to take a bit, it was not lost to him. As soon as he got it, he quickly pulled out of the city, and it galled him to have to leave as well, but he felt it was better to find out where they were going. While all this was going on, Diana could not help but feel guilty as she moved deep into the temple while covering herself in a hooded robe. By all rights she should not do this. Going into the temple of Athena like a common thief was going against her grain and upbringing. But she could not help but feel that this was the proper course of action even if there was no doubt in her mind that her mother Hippolyta would not take kindly to it. Diana was a member of the mythical Amazons of Themyscira, women of the past who had been allowed to live on the island as it was both their home and their mission to guard the gate into the underworld. Her mother Hippolyta was supposedly placed this duty for her unwitting part in an ancient rebellion by her lover Hades against his brother. That and many of the Amazons had been victims of man's actions centuries prior. Thus men were not welcomed on Themyscira and considered as inferior and cruel barbarians. She too had been trained to never trust men and she had the same beliefs to the negative qualities men had. But unlike her fellow Amazons, Diana was willful, empathic, and also had one trait that at times had been a bit of a pain for her mother. That was her curiosity towards man's world. She was always curious about what it was like at man's world and also wanted to see if it was truly as bad as her people had said. She had at times worried about man's world since she felt that they could better defend themselves if they understood what the world of men was like. Hippolyta was willing to tolerate that and loved her either way, but told Diana not to think too hard on the fate of men and just be with her people as the gods would be there to protect them. This normally would have placated anyone, but not her. And now here she was, before the altar of Athena where the mystical armor of their people's champion lay. She had a feeling that these would soon be given to the one who would serve as their champion in man's world, but now she was going to use them help man in what she felt was their darkest hour. This was something she had hoped not to do, but in her heart, Diana felt that it was right. She looked one more time to her homeland and to where her mother was currently sleeping and spoke gently. I am sorry, mother, for this, but I have to do it. Diana removed her hood and then the robe as she began to don on the armor of her people's champion. As he got to where Batman and Superman had gone, Naruto hoped that they were soon going to be found and they all can get back into figuring out how to deal with these creatures. But that was when his danger senses kicked in and he stopped as he was now on top of a high rock face. He then spotted a number of strange things chasing the plane Batman was piloting. Superman was quickly fighting the alien things and Naruto decided to get into the fight fast before things got really complicated. He quickly focused his chakra and then fired out a chakra chain towards Batman's plane, namely one of the wings in order to get to him. The chain soon wrapped around the wing and he quickly moved to pull himself to the plane. It was not a very good ride for Naruto, but he was not going to waste time with the whole thing as he landed on the wing, right to the moment Batman turned to see him. The blonde turned and quickly did some hand seals as another of the alien fighters came at the fighter. Once he was done, he summoned the attack with a field of air appear at his hands. Fuuton. Kyojin Shuriken. The massive blasts of wind took the form of shuriken that flew right into the proverbial faces of the alien fighters. One got shredded and was soon going down while another was severely hit on the side of the wing and sent careening away, no doubt to get repaired, while the other got the hit right in the face and blew up. Naruto turned and then caught the sight of the strange green-skinned dude suddenly turn, translucent and go out of the flying plane Batman owned and then joined them. He whistled at that and commented on it to himself and Kurama as well. Damn, that was like that skill Toby had back in the day, but there's no way that guy's either a ninja or human. This world's getting all the more interesting. Come it Kit, I think we finally got some real enemies to fight. Naruto could tell that Kurama was excited as he summoned more of his chakra and then fired out a blast of fire chakra, copying the same technique Sasuke had used on him from before. And it was something that he had spent years working on as well, since who knew when the move might come in handy. Kaiton. Hosenka no Jutsu. The massive ball of fire erupted from his mouth and then exploded into a wave of massive fireballs that came out like machine gun rounds or like buckshot out of a shotgun as the alien fighters were hit, and one was covered in fire and soon crashed while another swerved away. Yet more were coming towards them and Naruto was able to turn when another beam came at him and Batman. Superman came in and managed to block on the beams with his own heat vision as he spoke to Naruto and Batman. Move you two. I can't hold him off forever. Naruto saw that Clark must have been tired somewhat from the fighting and quickly grabbed one of his father's patented kunai and tossed it at the alien. He quickly vanished from the bad jet and appeared over the alien fighter with his father's kunai in hand. He then landed on the alien and took out his swords and then channeled his chakra into both swords and slashed into the back of the organic-looking fighter. The weapons caused damage and forced it to stop firing as Superman and now moved into the process of shaking him off. Naruto managed to use his chakra to hold on as best as he could on the fighter before decided to focus his chakra to his swords once more and then attacked. Futen Kenjutsu. Kyojin Wangetsu Udageki. The two swords each unleashed a massive curved cutting blade of pure chakra-enhanced wind that managed to skewer their way through the alien fighter as Naruto quickly leapt away and managed to land on a nearby mountain by using his wind chakra to act as a form of primitive thrust to keep him from going splat even with his senjutsu chakra still in him. Just in time to see Batman's fighter take a hit on the very same wing that he had been on only moments before. He quickly began to focus his chakra to create his wind armor when he spotted a beam of green light suddenly surround the crippled machine. He looked and saw none other than the hero known as Green Lantern. He had a feeling that there were going to be others coming in soon. He placed that aside as he landed on the mountain and quickly moved down the mountainside as another alien fighter strafed at him with its weapons. The blonde quickly moved to avoid the shots and quickly fired several of his shuriken which he imbued with his senjutsu chakra to cause above normal damage. They hit the alien fighter, but not hard enough to cause crippling damage, even when they managed to go in deep. He quickly threw his father's kunai to quickly avoid the alien's next barrage and soon was on the mountainside, only to see another figure appear in the field, and one with wings no less. And this one also happened to have a very unique chakra signature on it as well. Looks like this battle is about to get really crowded. We got some new arrivals. Naruto mentally agreed with Kurama and turned when he sensed two more signatures. One was human, though a bit different than the chakra signature of Batman's. And the other one was very different as well, telling him that the new arrival was not human. He turned to watch the battle just as yet another figure joined the whole mess. This time, however, Naruto's senjutsu chakra senses were surprised to feel the very strong energy coming from her. Whoever this new arrival was, the person had a lot of chakra in her, along with another energy source that felt very different. The chakra felt very strong and thick, it also felt human yet not at the same time, making Naruto all the more confused by what he was feeling through his sage mode. He decided to help but quickly using the same techniques as before to take out the alien fighters from the sky while he was on the ground. The massive shuriken and mass fireballs did what they were meant to do as several more alien fighters were sent down to the ground. He then summoned his wind armor to take to the skies a bit more and was soon charged at by one of the last remaining alien fighters as the rest were either gone or were limping away. He unleashed his last attack which was a Rasenshuriken which was a lot harder to pull off in the sky than it was on the ground while he was still in sage mode. But the result was worth it as the last alien fighter was now nothing more than descending debris. The battle seemed to come to an end and that was something the blonde was happy for as he saw the heroes converging on where Green Lantern had lowered the plane he had just rescued. As the blonde got down to the ground using his father's special kunai, he got up and took it back to be hidden away as he was soon going to be joined by the others. Naruto sat next to a rock nearby that was not torn to bits in the fighting and looked at the company coming in. He had no problem recognizing Batman and Superman in the least, and he had seen images of Flash in the news every now and then, though the speedster was moving a bit too fast for his liking. And he had seen Green Lantern in action. But the others were rather new to him in many ways. It was obvious to him that the green-skinned being was an alien and possibly the one who had been sending him the images for a while now. But his attention was riveted on the two women who were with them right now, and he was always a sucker for attractive women. And these two fit the bill very nicely. The first was a long-haired woman with raven black hair that looked silky and well-groomed. She had deep blue eyes, red lips that had no flaw, and a well-formed and flawless face that Naruto could tell had no flaws and had all the positive traits that a beautiful woman would have. It was as if she was either blessed by the gods in this world, if there were any, with great beauty, and no doubt her family would be gifted with such as well. She was definitely the kind his godfather and sensei would have loved to research about. It was not just the face and looks too. Her body was well sculpted and had no signs of fat anywhere that did not need fat. Her bust was very well formed and was around the same size as his late wife Hinata's, with a bit more fullness to the size of Mei and possibly Tsunade, yet she did not seem the least bit troubled by them. She was all and very statuesque and would have really gotten a lot of attention anywhere she went, even more so with the clothing armor she had on. The getup she had on was comprised of a pair of silver bracers, a pair of star-shaped earrings, a type of sleeveless and strapless top that was made from red with some sort of marks in gold in the middle, and the wings that were on the area of her well-formed bust. On the waist was a golden metal belt, and the lower part made from blue material that looked metallic with stars on it. There was a golden lasso on her hip and wearing half-calf boots with silver metal. He had no idea who made that costume of hers, but it was not the least bit lacking in giving her a very sexy yet ass-kicking look. The way she moved and stood also told him that she might be royalty, and the aura he was picking up confirmed it. Couple that with her skills as far as he had seen, showing her respect was something of a mandatory thing, which was something he learned early on when he was a Hokage, since he had met many women who were not only strong but had an air around them and were worthy of respect, and after all, he was married to a princess himself who he loved deeply and who had her own strength of will. The second woman had copper red hair and wore a mask that had the look of a predatory bird and wore what could be described as interesting. Her face might be distorted and hidden by the said mask, but there was no doubt that she was attractive, as he also saw the deep green eyes in the holes, plus the full lips to boot. Her body was also well-toned and shaped with muscle and not a single trace of fat anywhere on her. The bust was also around the size of Koyuki's, though having a bit of fullness to it as well, so she definitely had a body to die for. The wings only served to add to the whole exotic look that she was releasing. The upper part of her costume was in the same style but was light yellow cream in color, which held her more than ample bust and hugged her frame very well. She had a green belt with metallic buckle, a set of green skin-tight pants of some material he could not identify, with red boots and a red-style lower portion that he knew had best not be described in too much detail. Add that to the wicked-looking mace she had with her and held on with a strap of leather-like material on the wrist. She looked very attractive in an exotic way and yet looked like she would easily smash your face in if given a chance. Damn, whoever they are, they definitely would be very interesting to talk to. I suppose, though the dark-haired one seems to have trace energies coming from her, definitely more than mere chakra, possibly magic. The soon-to-come discussion between Naruto and Kurama was cut short when Superman came to face him. You all right, Hokage? Yeah, managed to dig my way out of the ruin I was in earlier. Damn thing, should have tried to find my body first instead of walking away. That way it would not have gotten a Rasenshuriken in the face. Superman did not know how to respond to that and decided not to comment just yet as the other heroes were arriving in their own fashion. It was here that Flash spoke the very second they got sight of Diana when handing the torn-off wing of Batman's plane. Hey Bats, I think you dropped this. It was here that Diana and Superman landed, and the second the speedster from Central City spotted the Amazon princess, he was immediately attracted, as any normal man would, and he picked what he deemed as a classic pickup line as he handed the piece back to Batman, who decided not to glare at Flash, until later, that is. Whoa, where have you been all my life? Themyscira. Diana, being unused to the world of men, and namely the modern world as her homeland had been isolated for a very long time, was responding to Flash's question in a straightforward manner. This meant that she was very much unaware of the hidden meaning behind Flash's question. Flash himself was surprised. What? That was when Shara gave the answer to that particular question. That's the name of the home of the all-female warrior culture of the Amazons. I thought that place was just a legend. They were soon joined by Superman, Jean, and Green Lantern. Diana then spoke to Shara and in turn introduced herself to the other assembled heroes. I assure you that it is as real as the land we are standing on right now. I am Diana, Princess of the Amazons. Naruto smirked a bit behind his mask and replied. You're from a nation of women warriors called the Amazons. Yes, and as I have stated earlier, I am a princess of my homeland. Does that surprise you? Naruto shook his head and replied. Hardly. I've met women of your same rank and position, so I know a princess when I see one. It's a privilege to see one of your position willing to fight in battle, since I've only met few princesses willing to get their hands dirty. I even met the queen, as you can call her, of a ninja village, who also happened to be an all-women ninja force, and she was not afraid to drive her fist into the face of a foe threatening her people. So I guess I should bid you welcome, Princess Diana of the Amazons. You fight very well, so you are certainly welcome to join this battle. What he said to Diana was not a complete lie. After all, he did encounter the head of the Nadeshiko village, Shizuka, and her attendant bodyguard. And her village's people did have something of a society similar to Diana's people, the Amazons, since all of their ninja were female. He never set foot in the place himself due to their isolationism at times, but he was on good terms with Shizuka, who was currently their village leader and was one heck of a fighter. He had no idea if she ever changed the laws of her people, but the fact that she was married when he met her again indicated that she did. Plus, he did read about the term Amazon in his search in the internet and had to admit that the information was kind of hard to swallow. But he was also the kind of guy who now in his age preferred not to make any sudden assumptions, as that had gotten him in more trouble, and physical altercations in his life. All of which in hindsight, he could do without. The green-skinned being moved over to him and spoke to Naruto. So I see that you are here. It's good to know that you are alive. When I tried to scan for you while I was held captive, you briefly disappeared and I was afraid you were lost. Naruto replied neutrally to that. I take it you were the one who sent the images into my head and Superman's. Yes, I apologize for the pain the visions I sent have caused you, but when I was captured, I had to exert a lot more power in order to reach out to you and anyone else I could summon to help fight the invaders. I did the same to everyone here as well, since this threat is too much for just one hero to take on alone. You know, you have made sleeping for me the least comfortable activity in my life, and that was something I was hardly fond of. You have any idea how many nice dreams you spoiled for me? But I am willing to let that slide, provided you tell us all what those warnings were for. Flash then spoke to the others as he was getting all the more confused by the moment. Look, I'm usually the kind of guy who's fast on the uptake, but I am with the blonde dude with the mask and the ninja getup. Can someone at least tell me what the heck is going on here? Jean quickly began to fill them in on what happened on Mars nearly a millennia ago. His people had a bright and glorious civilization, and at the height of their prosperity and peace. The invaders shattered that as they came, and soon the Marians were in war. They abhorred the taking of any life but to save what they could of their people. But the battles cost them dearly, as the invaders fed on their psychic energies, and when they grew weaker, the enemy grew stronger and even took their ability of shape-shifting. He and his fellow survivors launched a final desperate assault to use a special nerve gas that they had developed, and soon they attacked the stronghold. It was a successful operation, but the price was fatal, as this left Jean as the last Martian left alive. He made it his mission to contain them in their citadel in stasis, but after 500 years, the Mars mission undertaken by the astronauts freed the invaders, and with his people gone, the aliens targeted Earth next. As soon as Jean was done speaking about the events that doomed his people and what he had done after the Imperium had been placed in suspended animation until now, Flash was the first to speak, as he could not help but feel that something was amiss. Hold it, if they were that bad, then why was it that no one else knows about it? The government should have done something to prepare, right? John snorted and replied. Probably some pencil pusher in Washington decided to have it stripped off the records and have it classified. Naruto, however, shook his head and replied. No, I don't think so. Batman turned and spoke to Naruto. What exactly do you mean by that, Hokage? Naruto looked at the other heroes and replied. He had been working with Kurama to put the pieces together, to answer the events of the night before and now. And what Jean said about the Imperium and the recent things that occurred only served to complete the whole picture. Think this all through first. The Astro. Never mind. Never could get that word right in my head. These space explorers on Mars find what you call the find of the century, only to discover that it's the biggest threat the world had ever seen. And they did not bother to report it when they had a chance. No, I think the reason no one knew about it is that when they awakened, the Imperium already made their move. An army of invaders intent on conquering a world would never reveal themselves accidentally to anyone until they had the right moment. Jean, you said the Imperium managed to take your people's ability to shapeshift after they invaded your world of Mars, right? Jean nodded. Then they would have the ability to shapeshift now to any form they want, and if what I and Batman saw that was done to those 3 human scientists is any indication, then it's safe to assume that what happened to the group on Mars is the same. Their infiltration team came here and started doing what they could to weaken Earth's defenses. Those stations owned by Bruce were naturally the first to avoid early detection, and then Superman paled as he quickly understood it. The nukes, the same ones I decommissioned by Carter's requests. Naruto nodded. Exactly. Carter never came back to Earth at all. no doubt he's either being held in a pod like the three scientists or dead already. The one we all saw on TV is no doubt head of the Imperium's infiltration team. Clever if you think about. Assume the guise of a national hero, advocate the wishes of the masses to disarm nuclear weapons to strip away any means of defense, and leave Earth open to attack by the rest of the forward force. I've seen tactics like that before, and my home village was victim to such an attack by a rival force, so this is to be expected. They rendered Earth deaf, dumb, and blind first, and now they destroyed the nukes so the militaries don't have anything to give them a fighting chance. Green Lantern growled and his eyes glowed in anger at the fact that Earth was now rendered helpless for invasion. Like hell they are. If they think that we're going to let them set one foot on this world, they are going to get what's coming to them. The implications of the Imperium's attack hit home hard, and the hardest hit was Superman as he realized that he had rendered Earth powerless. The Man of Steel was silent as he contemplated what he had unwittingly done, and he felt so foolish and used, a situation Naruto was quick to see, and he spoke to Superman. Don't let that get to you. We have to deal with the here and now, Superman. That monster using Carter's form and face will be brought to account, but we have to set that aside. Superman nodded at that as he knew that there would be time for dealing with the invader who took Senator Carter's form. They had to deal with the soon-to-come invasion first and foremost. But just as they were getting ready for the worst, the sky was soon being darkened, and it was an unnatural cloud cover that seemed to spread all over the place. Flash saw that and was more than ready for a question on what was happening before them. What the heck is happening now? Jean was able to provide a more than adequate answer. The invaders are nocturnal creatures and do not operate in the daylight. That is why they are currently deploying special factories that release a specially made ion particle field that helps block out the sun. They did the same to Mars when they invaded, and that aided them considerably in eventually driving my people to extinction. No doubt this is what they are going to do once the whole world is under eternal night. Flash decided to try and lighten the mood, as it were, even though he knew that this was not going to sit well with the more serious heroes here. And naturally, seeing that their foes were the night-loving type, he turned to the Dark Knight himself. Maybe we can have Batman here go and talk to them. I mean, he likes the night as they do, so maybe they can be friends. Naruto snickered a bit at that to himself, as he had done something similar to lighten the mood in his missions. It didn't always work, but there was no sense in trying. Bruce already knew that the joke was directed at him and was not in the mood for such things. This is not the time to act funny, Flash. Flash moved towards the Martian in his usually cool and flippant fashion and replied. Why are we worrying anyhow? All we have to do is make of that gas and then knock them all out with it and finish them off before they can be the wiser, right? And I bet that you have the gas with you as well, right, Jean? Jean was quick to turn that plan down the proverbial drain as he shook his head. I am afraid that I can no longer use the gas. When we developed it, we used several rare Martian plants to do it. They do not grow on Mars anymore since the invaders ravaged my home world. The samples I have that were still viable were destroyed when I was captured, along with any of the gas supply that was usable as well. Without the plant samples, there is no way to make the gas at all. Flash couldn't help but feel a bit defeated by that and replied lamely. So, what exactly is Plan B? Diana was quick to offer a solution. Then we should focus on the factories then. Destroying those will no doubt have a crippling effect on their war efforts. If we cannot stop them with this gas, then we can at least deny them their ability to operate on the world by taking the factories down. Naruto nodded in agreement with Diana's assessment. Taking out the factories could have a deadly effect on the Imperium, since the only reason they would have such places to control is if they were very vulnerable to sunlight. I'm with Princess Diana on that one. Taking those factories out can have an effect on the invasion of these alien beings, since the only reason they would have factories to block out the sun is if they have very strong aversion or even a reaction to sunlight apart from being nocturnal. Plus, if we manage to take down one, we might get some information on them to find out if there are any other weak points, something we and the rest of the military can certainly use. Diana looked at the masked man with a measure of surprise. Instead of telling her to not speak because she was woman, he approved of her plan instead. That was not what her tutors had said about men, as they described men as being egotistical and arrogant in thinking. They viewed women as inferior, and that was something Diana had learned to dislike during her sessions with them. It hardly helped matters that her mother also had ill views of men for different reasons. She also noted something else. The energy the Hokage was using right now, for some reason or another, it was similar to the one sensed by their priestess Mala. She began to suspect that the one that the priestess had sensed days before, who could tap into nature, was right there with her. That was surprising to her, as she had learned from one of the few times some of her sisters came back from a foray into man's world for scouting missions, that men no longer followed the old ways and became too reliant on technology. This man seemed different to her in the way he seemed to be able to tap and control energy with harmony than with force. Green Lantern glared at both Diana and Naruto and replied. This is not the kind of thing for rookies and ninja wannabe kids to be part of, lady. That statement was not going to sit well with Diana as she glared at Green Lantern. The idea of him calling her a rookie despite the fact she was born and raised as a warrior galled her, and she was about to respond to that. But Naruto beat her to it as the blonde was less than pleased, even more that she was. Naruto glared darkly at Green Lantern and could not help but be insulted by the man. Calling him a kid was an annoying thing, though something he can laugh off. But being called a ninja wannabe was more than annoying to the blonde, it was borderline slapping in the face insulting. The anger was for good reason, considering the fact that he was a cage-ranked shinobi, with a lot of skills, jutsu, experience, as well as being a sage, a jinchuriki, and had literally lived for nearly a century in the ninja arts. He was also annoyed at the fact that he was insinuating that neither he nor Diana had no place to help humanity when it needed all the heroes it could get. He had lived a long time to know that with a war like this, now was not the time to be wasting energy on trying to point out who's the rookie and who's the veteran. He made that obvious as he finally released his killing intent towards John, and while killing intent from powerful ninja was very strong, killing intent from a ninja with the level of experience like Naruto was very strong. That aura got the attention of every hero in the immediate area as they all shivered a bit, even more so since in doing so, Naruto allowed some of Kurama's chakra to mix with the killing intent along with him shedding his youthful nature. Superman and Batman were surprised as Naruto's entire demeanor became cold and furious in such a way that seemed impossible for someone as young as he looked. Jean himself took a half step back as he had not felt such emotion from anyone. Flash was surprised at the sudden change in the blonde ninja with them. Diana was also caught unaware of the sudden attitude change from the blonde warrior nest to her, and Hawkgirl looked at Naruto while slightly tightening her grip on her mace. That aura feels cold and dangerous. I've never felt anything like that before. The target of said aura was quick to sense that, and while he remained calm looking, Jon Stewart had to admit that feeling that level of animosity was pretty strong, stronger than most he had sensed. To see it coming from the young blonde teen was surprising, as the only time he had ever felt that was from of the most battle-hardened soldiers and officers in his time in the Marine Corps and among the Green Lanterns, the most obvious being the former Lantern Sinestro. Naruto then spoke once more, and gone was the tone of a young teenager, but in its place was the tone of a man of authority, experience, and power. As well as someone who was royally pissed off. What did you just call me, you snarky arrogant little bastard? Green Lantern was surprised by that as Naruto got off the rock he was sitting on. He then stepped forward and without batting an eyelash placed his sword right next to John's throat at high speed with the edge right at his throat. It had caught the dark-skinned human lantern by surprise as he did not hear the telltale sound of a sword being drawn and he could feel the steel on his neck. He saw that Naruto's eyes were cold and glacial as the ninja spoke. Don't let the fact that I look like a teen blind you to who I really am. When I was only 13, I faced a highly trained killer who as a young man slaughtered an entire class of highly skilled warriors by himself. I also faced a person who sold his soul to wield unholy power to become a master of all techniques where I come from. I have fought on missions that could kill any regular kid in any city in this nation. I have endured pain in both body and mind that would have broken any regular teenager for years. I have fought in a war that decided the fate of not one nation, but the whole world. And I have killed people before. There were only 2 of them, but both were criminals and terrorists of the highest order. They thought nothing of razing entire nations to the ground, sending countless people to the slaughter, experiment on the living and the dead, seeing all beings as nothing more than pawns for them to play with and use for whatever sick plans they have. They deserved to die, and I was the one who carried it out, and I did so without any hesitation. I am a lot older than I look, and I have faced threats and enemies that would have killed lesser men and women at the age I look to you. I have lived my entire life as a ninja, and while I do not like to take life, if there is no other choice or the enemy is too dangerous to live or no longer someone who can be saved, I will stop him, her, them, even if I have to kill them. And where I come from, you do not ever show disrespect to your allies. As of right now, all of us here know what is at stake if these Imperium or whatever they are take over this world. Look at what they did to Jean's world. They intend to do that here now, and I will gladly sell my life to stop them before they do so. Now is not the time to be telling who the rookie is or being picky about who is on your side. The lady who you happen to have insulted from I have seen already happens to have a strength to make her on par with Superman, have the ability of flight, have excellent reflexes, have a measure of battle training and skill, and more. He then pointed to Diana, who was surprised by this, and she listened intently to what the blonde ninja had to say. She had never heard of ninja before, but if this man's skill was any indication, they were very skilled warriors. From what I have seen, she is more than ready and capable to help fight these bastards from space, so you do not have the time to state such bullshit. The enemy does not give a shake of a cockroach's dick and balls if you are the veteran or the rookie, if you are man or woman. The only thing they want is to see you and everyone who opposes them dead. I will gladly fight by her side because she is here of her own free will and knows the results if we all fail. Which you apparently see but think that it's better to go do it the official way when now is not the time for such actions. You are going to have our help whether you want it or not, but don't ever insult me or her ever again. And for the record, Naruto turned and quickly lashed out with his free hand that was coated faintly with chakra with his fingers extended and bent like claws. The results were there was a large number of boulders and trees that were at least 50 feet away from the group suddenly shredded and sent flying into the air and reduced to slivers of wood and stone. That left a very clean landscape that showed a clean cut through the entire area. Naruto turned to John and replied with a tone of finality. What you have seen me do earlier is just a sample of what I can do. If you want to test me, Green Lantern, go ahead. But I promise you that I will give you a beating you will never forget. With that, Naruto began to rein in his killing intent aura and sheathed his sword as he moved away and went back to where he was, which was next to Diana, and sat once more in the lotus position on the rock. His features relaxing as he went back to looking like a teenager. But it was obvious that his display had unnerved some of the heroes. Nevertheless, Diana was very much impressed, as she had never seen that level of sword skill, as she had not even seen him draw his sword or hear it until it was at Green Lantern's throat. There were those of her sisters back home who were fast with the sword, and she was fast herself, but this Hokage, as he called himself, seemed to be of a caliber that would be equal or a bit higher than her sisters and herself. She turned to Naruto, who was back to being a teen in his aura, which was once more warm and welcoming. A stark contrast to the aura she had felt earlier, and she could not help but tell that he spoke truly about his belief in her abilities. She was curious about his powers, namely that energy he had released earlier. The energy was not evil, but it was strong and had a bestial yet intelligent aura about it. It was different from the energy he had when she first saw him. She knew now that he was the one who used that energy that Mala sensed before on Themyscira, though she was still unsure on how he did it, and she might decide to ask him when there was time for her to do so. But that could wait for now, as they did have a more serious matter to deal with. Batman was now more than convinced that there was more to the Hokage than he had first thought. The sudden shift of the blonde's demeanor and personality was enough to show to Bruce that he was not someone to take lightly, even more so with what he already knew of the shinobi. The power Naruto showed earlier meant that he had a lot more skill and power than he had let on. Superman was surprised somewhat, as he had never seen the Hokage act like this before, along with hearing him speak in such a manner. That was a tone that made even him feel a shiver through his skin, and the energy he briefly felt was a lot more potent than he had felt in a while. It was not magic in any sense, it felt more primal and alive. It was not evil, but it was powerful and bestial yet with intelligence. Plus, the way the blonde ninja acted was enough to show that he was a lot more seasoned than he looked, even more so when the two of them faced one another back in Metropolis. Flash was wide-eyed and slightly grinning at the dressing down John had gotten, though he was a bit shocked at the way the blonde teen changed his nature entirely. That told him that this kid was a lot more than he seemed, and if he was indeed a ninja, not one of those one found in those movies and comics, but the actual deal, with some really cool powers, then it made sense he could do those things. If that was the case, then he was all right with having the Hokage join them in this fight. Hawkgirl had to admit to herself that she was a bit worried about the way the blonde had changed when he was insulted by Green Lantern. That kind of attitude change and the aura he gave out told her that despite his youthful looks, this blonde was no simple-minded teen doing this for glory. That aura was the kind only elite warriors had, developed only after years of field experience and hardship. How that came into this guy and why he said he was older than he actually looked made her all the more curious who he was. John managed to regain his faculties and glared at Naruto as he began to move forward until Superman stepped in. Now is not the time for this, John. The Hokage is right, we have to work together here to deal with the threat. John sighed a bit as he knew that Superman had a point. If they did not stop this Imperium from taking over the world, then it was over. That did not mean that he was going to easily forget what had just happened between him and the two. Though the focus of his ire was the Hokage, as he had not expected the guy drawing a sword on him, and he was not going to forget it any time soon. Naruto knew that look but did not care. Now was not the time for glaring, now was the time for action. It did not take long for the heroes to decide that they would be better off working in separate teams to take out their targets. There was one target in the South Pacific, namely in Indonesia, another in Egypt, and the last was obviously the one in Metropolis. Once that was over, they now had to decide on the individual team setup, and Flash, ever the flirt, decided to make his choice known as he moved to Diana and placed his hand on the princess's shoulder. Dibs on the Amazon. Diana did not look the least bit comfortable with what Flash was doing, and Naruto was more than able to see that. He had recalled his meeting with Shizuka from the village known as Nadeshiko, and coupling that with what he read about the term Amazon, he could tell that this might not end well, and he decided to speak to Flash serious before it got to a point where they would get into another argument. Flash, I recommend that you take the hand off the lady and let Diana decide for herself who she partners with. Or else you might not end up in the best of situations. Flash raised his eyebrow at that, and Naruto replied with a sigh. Keep in mind that Princess Diana happens to be from a nation of women who, from what I had managed to read and understand, don't exactly hold men in very high regard. In fact, I think that given the chance, the only thing they might do is to knock you around at best or outright kill you at worst. Now considering that Diana happens to be their princess and no doubt heiress to the throne, the fact that you are acting in a fashion that is deemed inappropriate could be considered a very serious offense. And as princess, I have no doubt that Diana right now is not the least bit comfortable around men, and the only thing you happen to be doing is not very nice to her cultural sensibilities. And no doubt a man touching an Amazon the way you are right now is considered a heinous offense, enough to get you sent to prison or a torture session at best, or lopping off of the offending appendage along with your head at worst, even more so as she is royalty. Besides, after what I have seen and we all have seen, Diana is more than able to take care of herself, so unless you plan on getting yourself beaten to a bloody pulp by her, I suggest you let her decide who she works with. Up to you if you want to go ahead, but take it from me, trying to get fresh with a super powerful woman who is not keen in the idea is going to end very badly for you. Flash gulped as he realized that Naruto was not joking around and quickly moved his hand off of Diana, though he still smiled a bit weakly at that. As for Diana, she felt relieved by that as she had indeed gotten rather uncomfortable with the situation. Naruto noted had and smirked a bit. This reminded him of the times his godfather Jiraiya, the ninja world's greatest pervert, would restrain himself whenever Tsunade was around, and for good reason, as he had tried to get fresh with Tsunade too many times until that fateful day he piqued her in, and nearly gotten killed as a result. As soon as that was out of the way, Batman spoke to the others seriously. We already got our objectives and targets, we should move out now. The longer we delay, the more time the Imperium will have to set their plans in motion. So let's get down to deciding who goes with who. In this case, who will you go with, Diana? With the heroes. Diana thought it over and looked at the assembled heroes, with Naruto seemingly silent as he decided to let her make her decision. She looked at Naruto, who was still wearing his mask, and decided to work with the ninja. After all, there were some questions pertaining to him, and she was not willing to work with Flash due to her unease at his actions, nor was she sure that working with Green Lantern was a good idea, as both of them were not on the best of terms. She then replied, as she knew that the longer they delayed, the quicker the Imperium were going to get to accomplishing their goal. I will work with the Hokage. Flash gave a sigh of disappointment while Naruto raised an eyebrow behind his mask. Sure, he was happy to be with a drop-dead gorgeous woman who by all rights be called a divine beauty, but he was not expecting it to happen that early. But who was he complain anyway? They had a lot to deal with and not enough time to do it in. He still had his senjutsu senses on, and already the effects of the factories could be felt. And longer they were left to rock, then things were going to get a lot harder from here on out. He placed those thoughts aside for now as he replied, I'm all right with that. Batman decided to work with them. He knew that the Hokage and Diana had a point. Even if Jean had given them information about the invaders, the loss of the nerve gas and any way to replicate it was a serious blow. The factories might hold the key, as he too felt that the Hokage's comments about the aliens using factories held water. I'll go with both Diana and Hokage. If there is any way to find information on how to beat the aliens without Jean's nerve gas and the plant samples, I'll need access to a factory and find what I can. Jean nodded and replied, I shall assist this team as well. I have learned enough of the technology of the Imperium so I can locate it. It seemed that all was settled until Jean spoke to them. Hold it, you guys happen to make up the largest team around. Are you sure that going in that large a group's a good idea? Naruto had a very accurate idea on why Jean would say that, but in his mind, this was about right. This was the usual team composition back home in Konoha. 1 Jonin sensei, 3 Genin or at times Chunin, and he was comfortable with the idea. Besides, this team looked a lot more promising, and he was not in the mood to be trading word barbs with Green Lantern, not with the survival of the world on the line. We're ready for it. Jean's got the first-hand knowledge, Batman's got the brains and skills, Diana here is more than ready, and for me, I'm all right with this. Besides, you, me, and Diana are not on very good terms anyway, so working with you is not going to be a good idea. Jean thought about arguing a bit more but decided not to bother with that for now. He decided to grab Flash despite the red-wearing superhero's obvious protests. And Superman as well as Hawkgirl headed off to do their part. Their target was the factory being set up in Metropolis, while Flash and Green Lantern directed their attention to the one in Asia, namely in Indonesia. As soon as the two other teams fanned out, Naruto decided to focus his senjutsu senses once more and spoke to the others. There's another factory in Egypt, though that one's not well set up yet from what I can sense. That might be a good place to start. Batman raised an eyebrow at that and made his confusion clear. How do you know that? Naruto chuckled a bit and replied. Sorry, but I am not going to say, but I can assure you that I am right on saying that they also are setting up somewhere in the desert area of that nation I just spoke of. Why they aren't moving as fast in Egypt might have something to do with the fact that it's morning over there in Egypt. Batman looked at his watch briefly and knew that the Hokage was correct, since it would already be morning there in Egypt, and if the creatures are indeed nocturnal, they would have more slower there than here in the area of Metropolis. This meant that they had to hurry and exploit this before they found a way to block the sun. En route to Egypt. Jean was currently ahead of the team as his telepathy was able to reach ahead of them to allow him to confirm that Naruto was right. There was indeed a factory located in Egypt, but due to it being in the area where it was already morning, the aliens were not able to set up in time. Naruto was not in the bad jet as he was sitting on the wing once more, using his chakra to hold himself in place. Batman did not move too fast as he was still not sure that whatever method Naruto was using would help him in holding on. In Jean's case, he was curious on how the Hokage would perform in the mission that was before them. The young man was highly skilled in the Martian's mind and the powers he had already displayed was surprising. There was no doubt in the last Martian's mind that there were a lot of secrets in him, but he knew that it was not his place to go around and ask questions. They had a more serious matter for them to focus on. And that was to prevent the invaders and their leader the Imperium from destroying this world. As for Diana, she was flying next to the Hokage and while she wanted to speak to him, ask him some questions, she decided that now was not the right time. They had a war to fight and there would be time for such questions later. En route to Indonesia. Flash was not the least bit happy as he and Green Lantern were on their way to engage the alien forces in Indonesia. He had hoped to be with either Diana and Hawkgirl, but now her was with the man who he felt was a real stick in the mud. You are no fun. John looked back a bit and sighed as he hoped that this was not going to turn into a shouting match. We're not here to have fun. We have to do our job and finish it before all of this goes straight to hell, you got me. Yeah, I get you. Both heroes moved on with Flash moving over the water without much problems as he was going at full auto. As for Superman and Hawkgirl, they were now reaching the city of Metropolis and there was no doubt that the invasion was really going all out. The factory was already there and Metropolis looked like it was when Darkseid and his forces were coming in to invade Earth itself. But they knew that they had to hold on and focus on the job before them. In the deserts of Egypt. Naruto was currently with Batman and Diana, hiding from the patrolling machines that the enemy had unleashed much earlier to secure the site. Only difference was that the machine seemed to be limiting its movements. No doubt it was trying to stay close to the alien factory to keep it from being harmed. Diana was not very happy with all the hiding, which was something he could understand since when he was young, hiding was not exactly one of his favorite moves. Hiding from the enemy is not the way of the Amazons. Naruto turned and replied as Batman was currently looking at the walker and the factory intently. Well, you have to get used to it, Princess Diana, we're going to need the element of surprise here until we get a clean way in. It was here that Jean finally appeared along with a pair of Naruto's released Cage Bunshin and the Marion spoke to the others. There is no sign of an entrance that we can use to infiltrate the factory. Diana decided to make the move as she got her rope and moved forward in flight. Then we make our own. Bruce was about to go after Diana when Naruto stopped him with a hand on his shoulder and spoke to him. I don't think that talking to her is a good idea, she's wanting to blow off some steam, so let her or she might take offense. Besides, I need to see what she can do with that golden rope of hers. Batman decided to watch and see if the blonde was right, and sure enough it was a fairly accurate move as Diana proved to be a real powerhouse. The woman took her lasso, while dodging the walker's energy weapon, and then came back to rope the thing on one of its legs, wrap the rope around it, and drag it down hard. Naruto whistled a bit, the strength was pretty much up there, and he briefly was pleased that neither Tsunade or Sakura had that level of strength. Still, he liked what he saw and it seemed to impress Batman enough that he did not comment further on the matter. The fact that the crashing walker helped in shattering the wall of the factory was a good bonus. Diana turned and spoke out to them as she quickly gave the walker a serious hit that seemed to tear into the armor and the sunlight seemed to cripple it as its inner self was exposed. There. Now we have our opening. As he and the others went in to join Diana, they were greeted by the arrival of some of the aliens who fired at them. Diana blocked their attacks with her bracers and soon some of the roof fell off. Diana looked at the aliens as the light of the sun filtered in as the aliens retreated. That was something that offended Diana, since the thought of running away from a battle was a sign of a coward, and despite her pacifistic nature, she did not tolerate cowardice. She turned to the others and spoke to them. We cannot wait forever, they are retreating like cowards. Naruto was quick to notice the sheer terror the aliens had at the beams of sunlight. They might not have anything resembling a face, and they certainly were not human, but Naruto learned enough in his long life to know that fear can be seen through physical reaction. He turned to Batman and saw that he too saw the reaction of the aliens, and he too was surprised and interested. Both of them nodded and they were soon following Jean and Diana as Jean knew the situation more than the others. In Indonesia, the situation for Flash and Green Lantern went down the wrong way. Flash, in a display of eagerness to get the mission done, quickly rushed in to attract the attention of the aliens. Much to Green Lantern's annoyance as he tried to stop the speedster from doing something outrageously foolish and foiling the mission. However, it was not long before Flash's actions came back to bite him in his red-covered butt, as he had stepped on some form of mine that was filled with a gunk that was less than nice to the nose, but enough to stop him cold. Now Green Lantern had to rescue him as the alien walkers were closing in, intent on either blasting the speedster into oblivion or just plain skewering him. In Metropolis, Hawkgirl and Superman had some level of good luck as they were finally able to take down some of the walkers. The Thanagarian was able to use her mace to make sure that the walker could not get up. Superman then used a karate-style chop to cut one of the legs and used it as an impromptu javelin to make a hole into the factory, and he turned to call to Hawkgirl. Hawkgirl, follow me. The walked in and Superman told her to keep her eyes open, to which she replied, I always do. It was not long before they came under fire from the aliens and Superman was about to handle it while telling Hawkgirl to stay back before the woman ignored him and charged in. The Kryptonian watched as the winged woman used her charged mace to bash the aliens around with considerable force, forcing him to duck when one flew overhead and was in a mess behind him. Whoa. He turned as Shara spoke while walking ahead to lead the two. What? There's a time for words, and a time for action. Superman knew that there was truth to that statement, but he did not expect to see them taken that literally. But he decided not to comment just yet as they still had a job to do, and he was still new to working with another hero. Back in Indonesia, Green Lantern was in a foul mood as he had finally freed Flash from most of the gunk that had held him captive, and he had managed to do so while getting himself and Flash away from the enemy so he could free the speedster from the rest of the gunk without being shot at by the alien walkers. He was not happy on how the mission was turning out, and there was the chance that they were going to have to pull back soon before things got really difficult. Of all the boneheaded and reckless things to do, have you ever heard of the concept of teamwork before in your life? Maybe we should save the motivational speeches for later. Like when we're not being shot at. As soon as he was free, the two tried to get back into the fight, and while it seemed that they were finally getting somewhere, things took a turn for the worse. The alien walkers tried to take down Lantern's shield, but got nowhere until they fired a pod missile that released a powerful yellow gas that was some sort of tranquilizer drug. The weakness of the Lantern ring came to play as the gas bypassed the shield and soon drove Green Lantern to the ground in an unconscious state. GL. Flash reached the downed Lantern using his speed to make his arms move the gas away and saw that sticking around as more walkers came at them was a bad idea as he quickly got the unconscious Lantern and hightailed it out of there. Their mission was a bust, and now they would have to hope that the others were doing a much better job than they were at the moment. Back in Metropolis, Superman and Hawkgirl moved deeper into the factory, and the Thanagarian was tense, holding her mace close to her, and she spoke seriously. They're close by. I can almost smell them. Superman was not too comfortable with the way Shara acted and asked the question that was in his mind after seeing her decimate the aliens. He had worked with aggressive people in the past, but certainly no one this aggressive. Are you always this eager to fight? Shara turned and replied stoically. My home world Thanagar is a warlike world, there it's either you strike first, or you die. Superman's reply to that was cut short as the aliens came back for more, but they retreated. Superman wondered why but got the answer as the tunnel was suddenly sealed in front of him and Hawkgirl and then behind them. They were soon hit by gas, and Hawkgirl was down as she was trying her best to recover from the sudden release of gas in the room. Hang on Hawkgirl, I'll. G. Superman's attempt to rip open the door behind him was cut short when massive amounts of energy were unleashed on him that forced him down. He was still injured and he too was soon overtaken by the gas. Egypt. The group was moving fast and hard as the Hokage was now taking the lead and was now better at killing the aliens. The chakra that he was feeding into his swords at a higher and more powerful amount helped augment the cutting power of his swords, made nearly effortless work on the alien forces as they were being cut down, and Naruto's cage bunchen, which he had sent ahead as recon units, fed intelligence on just where to hit, which he then fed to the others, and Jean confirmed his findings from his own prior battle experience. This was what made them focus on taking out the blonde Hokage, as he was soon making himself a serious target. That was a bad move on their part, and Naruto made that clear as he would attack them quickly and without hesitation. The others were also quick to aid him in the fight now that Naruto had told them just where to hurt them, though that went to both Batman and Diana. Diana was not standing by as she used her bracers to block the shots of the aliens to render their attacks weaker, but she also did the same thing as before to send the laser bolts right back at the shooters. Batman was not alone either, as he took out a special type of fist weapon that unleashed powerful blasts of electricity that allowed him to damage the ones who he was able to attack, while also using special explosive loaded batarangs to attack his own targets. Jean also used his ability to become intangible and invisible to ambush the aliens and take them down. But no matter how many times they fought through the aliens and their ambushes, the aliens continued to move in and attack the group, trying their best to herd the four heroes to a location that would be to their advantage. Naruto was getting a bit tired and felt himself begin to weaken, so he quickly deactivated his current senjutsu mode and switched back to using his regular chakra and some of Kurama's own. It helped him recover quickly and soon he was back to full tank. Diana came in and blocked the attacks that were being thrown at the Hokage as well as the others, but she was not pleased by the rapid approach of the aliens. They've cut us off again. It's like they already know just where we are. Batman spoke out as he readied a batarang and fired it at the enemy as its explosive payload forced the aliens to break off and avoid being attacked. Naruto was quick to place one sword on his back and switched to using several explosive tag-loaded kunai and shuriken to take out several other aliens while feeding some of his chakra into the weapons and tags to increase their power. He focused a brief amount of his sage mode and felt something alien in the structure and replied. This entire place feels alive in an alien sort of way to me. I don't like it one bit, but if the fact that's like a twisted living structure is true, it must sense we're not its makers, and it's guiding them to us. We need to hurry before we get ourselves way in over our heads. Diana agreed with the blonde and readied herself to cover the others, but she knew that only Jean could help them as he knew their foes better than they did. Batman thought the same thing and turned to Jean, only to find that the Martian was currently still and his eyes were glowing in a strange fashion, confusing Batman briefly until he shouts in order to try and snap the Martian out of whatever it was that was. Jean. The glowing in the Martian's eyes faded away and Jean spoke. Superman and Hawkgirl are down. They have failed in their mission. Batman was surprised at that and so was Diana. What? Are you sure about that, Jean? Yes, but they are alive. No doubt the invaders plan to either torture them or feed on them. The two heroes were disgusted by that, and while his face was hidden by his chakra-enhanced mask, the Hokage gave a frown as that made him recall the sight of the three scientists in the abandoned lab, and he did not like where that was going. He placed such thought aside as more aliens came at them and Jean led them to another series of tunnels saying that the core was in this direction. Diana and Jean then moved up another tunnel while he turned and fought off the aliens that came out from another chamber. He soon followed Batman as Diana covered their retreat as they moved into another room. The Amazon looked behind them and came back. We've lost them. For the moment we have. Batman switched to using a pair of knuckles that released high-strength voltage for close combat while Jean took out his M90 for the close quarters bit as Jean called their attention. We're here. The group turned and there was a cavernous room that had a number of the aliens moving about and using control panels and what appeared to be some sort of chamber holding a large crystal inside what appeared to be some sort of gestation tank. This is the central core of the factory. Batman then spoke to the Martian as he could see that this was going to be the best place to finally take down the factory for good. How do we take it down? The crystal there in the chamber is the ion matrix crystal, which is the heart of the factory and also the source where they can create the ion cloud itself. Removing that should shut down the factory and compromise it. I will need a distraction to get the crystal though. Naruto then moved to his favored jutsu replied to that. Don't worry, one distraction coming up. Batman and the Hokage made their moves with the Dark Knight using a batarang to cut a nearby pipe that unleashed a wave of black fluid on the aliens underneath it. The Hokage and his summoned Cage Bunshin tossed out a large barrage of explosive kunai in rapid succession and sent several of the aliens flying while Diana ripped out another cable, causing gas to hit the aliens, and the flames from the detonation of the explosive kunai also created a firestorm of destruction that caught the other aliens off guard. This was enough for Jean to move in by phasing to the location, while Batman, Naruto and his Cage Bunshin, and Diana were under attack. The Amazon blocked the attacks while Batman came in his usual way and used his taser weapon for the kill. Naruto fought the aliens with both his sword and some of his wind techniques, namely the same technique he had used in front of Lantern while in a display of acrobatic prowess without his father's specially made kunai of the Hiroshin Jutsu going down and supported the Dark Knight from behind. Naruto then used his swords to cut down several aliens who tried to sneak up on Diana and she smiled briefly at him for watching her back. Jean reappeared near the crystal chamber now that the distraction was in full effect. He took out the alien nearby and quickly retrieved the crystal. The effects were quick as the factory began to shake and malfunction, but not before he was shot by one of the aliens. The last Martian was sent down to the ground and lost his grip on the crystal. Jean. Diana flew to his location after defeating her foes, and when she got there, Batman shouted to her. Get him out, now. Naruto and Bruce quickly moved to get to the two as Diana lifted Jean and flew to a nearby tunnel area. Batman quickly used his grappling gun and moved over to get the crystal while the Hokage covered his back by placing aside his sword and firing more of his shuriken and kunai with the explosives on them. However, the aliens quickly accessed the door controls and before the two men could make it, they were sealed in. Batman used his taser to try to break through while Naruto began to use his Rasengan, but it was not going well. The two turned and saw the aliens coming at them. This is not good. Naruto, however, was not giving up just yet as he quickly formulated a plan that would get them out of here quickly. Diana was stunned at the fact that both Batman and the Hokage were not behind them and she rushed back, shouting their names. Batman. Hokage. She, however, stopped as the sounds of laser fire came out and soon silence. No. Horror filled her at the fates of the two men and she tried to help them but was stopped by Jean as he recovered from the injury he got. No, there is nothing we can do for them. By Athena. You don't mean that they are gone. Jean's sad look was heartbreaking to Diana as she looked at the door and spoke. Hera, help us. Unknown to Diana, the two were not gone just yet as Naruto quickly grabbed Batman, who still held the crystal in hand, and used the Kawarimi no Jutsu in time, and Jean had shielded the two from being detected. They would be the key needed to win this war, and as long as the enemy thought them dead, then they would have a chance. As soon as he used the technique, he and Batman were now among the aliens and quickly fought back against the aliens to take them down. Apparently the aliens themselves were surprised as they thought that they had killed the two heroes, only to find them being attacked by the two very quickly. Batman looked at the group of aliens in surprise, not at the sight of them out cold as it were, as he and the Hokage were the cause of the whole thing, but how he and the Hokage had appeared among them, just as it seemed they were about to be shot. He turned and was surprised to see that two of the aliens who had shot at them were now there with burning holes in their bodies, showing that they were the ones who got shot by their own allies. He turned to Naruto and the blonde gave a nod as he decided to give some detail too. What happened? I did the same trick I did with your female partner when we first met, remember? Only in this case, I switched two of the ugly mugs with us so they go shot and not you and me. I used a different item in Batgirl's place when we met since it was the only one around. A ninja technique. You got it, but let's hustle. I doubt we're going to be alone for long. Hope you hold on to the crystal, Batman, cause it's time to get out of here. The two moved out and soon encountered a few more surviving aliens that they were quick to dispatch, and soon they arrived at a nearby wall. Naruto decided to get them an exit. Since he was still in sage mode, he decided to quickly summon a cage bunshin as he turned Batman, who was a bit surprised by the technique as he now saw himself facing two Hokages who quickly summoned two massive spheres of glowing energy. One of them turned to Batman and spoke to him. No time to explain, but enough time to make an exit. Move back, Batman, it's time to bring the house down. Naruto and his cage bunshin moved forward and soon smashed the spheres into the nearest wall, and the results were explosive. Naruto had decided that if he wanted to counter the aliens with his techniques, he was going to have to pump more power into his attacks. That would normally be difficult for a regular ninja since chakra control was needed, but he had been alive for a while now and his control was way better than when he was younger. The results of the attack were obvious as sections of the wall were blasted off and large cracks were soon forming all over the structure. It also blasted away any of the aliens who were in the blast zone. The dual Odama Rasengan, which was a bit larger now due to the increased amount of chakra, made one very big hole to allow the desert air in as well as the sunlight, and the two heroes were out of the building, and then they turned. The whole factory went down hard, or at least half of it, while the other half suffered considerable structural collapse. It was here that some of the aliens were forced out into the light. They quickly screeched in fear as they sought cover, and the ones who were exposed literally began to have smoke come from their bodies. Naruto had not seen that before and was quick to comment on it. Now that's something. As the two looked at the panicking aliens, Batman was quick to note the reactions of sunlight on the aliens' bodies. He was quick to come up with a viable answer on why was it that the aliens were suffering severely in sunlight. They are vulnerable to UV radiation. That must be the other reason why they take great pains to avoid being exposed to the sunlight, and why their factories block out the sunlight when they landed on Earth. So I was right in thinking that they were not just nocturnal, so if this thing can make the cloud, perhaps we can make it do the opposite. Yes, since the crystal we have is the one that allows them to make that ion particle cloud, reversing its function should remove the clouds and give us a much better chance. The Hokage then spoke to Batman as he felt that the Dark Knight. Do you think that can be done? Batman nodded. I have the technology in my lair, but it will take me some time to get the process right. Good, I'll join you. Once we're done here, we can make our move on the aliens when we have that crystal ready. Back in Metropolis. The city was in utter pandemonium, as people rushed about. The police, fire department, and hospital services were doing their absolute best to keep things in order. But they were fighting a losing battle as the more radical elements in society were taking advantage of the chaos. While the invaders had halted their actions and focused more on securing the area around their factories, they had made sure to send out recon teams every now and then to squash any resistance that the humans could offer them, as annoying as it was due to the technological disparity between them. The military were doing what they can as well as the police and the SCU, but their weapons were not very effective in fighting the aliens, and this was not the same as with the Darkseid invasion, as the aliens were able to take solid hits quite well, though not to the level of superhuman strength. And with the riots going off at full swing, it was utter chaos as both the military and the police were hard pressed into maintaining order and fighting the invaders. Diana could not help but feel sickened at the sight of the people breaking down and turning on each other like this. Instead of working together to defend one another and fight the invaders with their military, the people turned on one another, looting, rioting, and more. The mere sight of such actions in this was appalling to the Amazon. She and Jean had gotten back from the mission in Cairo, and she had been saddened by the loss of both Batman and the Hokage, unaware that both of them still lived and that Jean had secretly used his telepathic powers to shield the two from the enemy. She found Batman's skills and tenacity as admirable, while the Hokage's strategic skills, fighting prowess, as well as his manners and respect to her were just as admirable. She also was intrigued by the powers he had under his command, as they were not in any way the same to magic. How he was able to use those techniques and somehow not be a magic user was a mystery to her. She looked on in disgust as the scene played on before her and spoke. I cannot believe that they are like this. Maybe my mother was right, mankind is not worth saving. I cannot believe that Batman and the Hokage gave their lives to save such people. Jean replied to that. Do not judge them harshly, they act out of fear and confusion and do not have the means to fight back or the will to do so. I hope that mentally shielding the two will work, their abilities and skills will be critical in saving this world. It was not long before they were joined by both Green Lantern and Flash, who had recently helped the police to try and keep order. Green Lantern was naturally the one who spoke. Sorry about being late, had to help rescue a number of civilians who were caught in a building with lost structural integrity. Why'd you call us back anyhow? Superman and Hawkgirl have been captured and are currently held in that factory over there. Flash quickly noted the absence of the others and spoke. Where are Batman and the Hokage? Jean was silent and Wonder Woman was saddened at the mention of the two men, and Jean replied. They fell as heroes. That shocked Flash and even Green Lantern, as they knew that things were getting really bad. However, they had little time on their hands to grieve for the two, as Jean told them that the Imperium, the governing intelligence that led the invaders, was already on its way to the planet's surface. They soon broke through the outer defenses and made their way to Superman and Hawkgirl. But something bothered Jean at how light the resistance was, and his fear proved true, as it was a trap. The ones they thought to be Hawkgirl and Superman turned out to be invaders, and they were soon knocked out and unable to fight. Outside, Naruto was quick to leap off the wing of Batman's fighter as the two of them arrived back in Metropolis, but this time they moved the fighter a fair distance from the city and soon began to move inside while avoiding patrols. The blonde had pretty much stayed out of the cave, seeing that Bruce needed to work and him around was not good. Once they were done, or at least Bruce was done, they hightailed back to Metropolis. Naruto quickly turned to Batman as he carried the crystal in his hands as the two of them moved closer to the target factory. But not before Naruto quickly released two Cage Bunshin on the fly and sent them to the back to gather some extra nature chakra. You sure that device with those modifications is going to work? Yes, but we have no time to waste here. This device should be the key to removing the cloud cover that they use for their invasion to finally be a success. But I need to connect it to the crystal to have any effect, namely in the same place we found it from before. Then let's go to it. We got to find the others. Can you sense them? Naruto focused his senjutsu senses once more and soon managed to locate the others, but the interference of so many of the aliens did not help matters. He focused a bit more and soon got a better reading as he spoke to Batman. I can feel them, but the number of aliens there in that factory is really making it a bit challenging. I am also sensing something really bad down there. I can wager a bet whatever it is that I am feeling is not going to be the least bit friendly. What do you mean? Whatever it is, I can say this much, it's evil, really down to the bone marrow evil. The two made their way to the factory with Naruto focusing on his senjutsu senses to locate the others. They kept out of sight as best they could, hoping that the shield was going to be enough until they could get within striking range. The two of them soon spotted the others but could not do anything for them at this time just as the alien impersonating Carter appeared. Earth's mightiest heroes, welcome. So you're finally here, the one who took Carter's place back on Mars when you and your forces woke up. The alien impersonator was slightly surprised as Superman glared at him and replied. Oh, you know who I am now. I am curious who told you that. No matter, you're all too late, this world will fall and soon all of you will feed the Imperium. The Hokage and the Dark Knight spotted the alien vessel above and spotted what appeared to be some sort of shuttle move away and enter the base itself. There the two spotted the Imperium. It looked like a massive violet jellyfish with black matter inside of it. The blonde Hokage was able to withstand the waves of evil coming from that monstrous thing. It resembled the zero-tailed demon that he faced when he first met Amaru-chan, along with that demonic entity Moryu when he worked with Xian-chan, and also that monstrous seawater thing that Orochimaru's former ally Amachi had summoned back when he was a kid. They had a chance to kill this alien right here and now, so they were going to do what they could. The two heroes turned to see Jean being tortured by the Imperium, but they were close already and Batman readied the explosives he had. And Naruto was quick to take out a Fuma Shuriken which had a good number of explosive tags stored in the blades. As soon as the weapon was fully extended, both of them looked at one another and silently nodded as they got ready for action as Jean finally shouted. Get ready. The second Jean shouted, the two heroes fired their weapons at the shield of the chamber. The combined attacks were enough to finally weaken the shield and soon, the Martian lowered the shield on the two of them and they were revealed to the aliens and the other heroes. Whoa, they're alive. Flash was relieved while Diana was amazed that they were alive. How did they make it back from certain death? Jean was the one to respond to that despite the fact that the Imperium was still trying to tear him to pieces figuratively and literally. I shielded them, so they would not be found. Batman quickly moved with Naruto going alongside him to cover him. Naruto used a powerful chakra-enhanced kick to send the last alien nearby flying aside as the Dark Knight placed the device through the now weakened section of the shield and placed the device on the crystal, activating it. Soon the crystal's red color changed to blue and the fluid inside of the chamber turned blue as well. The Carter doppelganger was shocked and shouted at what was going on and made that clear to the Hokage and Batman. What have you done? Batman replied in his usual fashion of being stoic and calm before the odds that were there. Reverse the ion charge, now this cloud is going to fade away. The leader of the aliens quickly shouted two simple orders to its minions. Destroy the crystal. Kill them. Naruto looked at Bruce and spoke as he knew that he might want to switch to close combat work to buy Bruce time to get the others free. You free the others, I'll keep them off your back. Batman did not argue as the two of them separated from one another as he quickly used his grappling gun and moved to the others as the newly altered fluid continued to spread through the factory systems. The Hokage quickly moved and slid down as lasers were fired at him. He evaded the ones that he saw coming as his Sage mode improved his speed a lot more, coupled with him focusing his chakra into his legs for extra speed and grip. As soon as he was halfway, he grabbed the two swords on his back as he leapt down in a graceful spinning flip. The people and aliens in the room heard two loud hisses as Naruto unleashed his blades, but they were glowing deep blue as he unleashed what appeared to large blades of pure air at the aliens below him. Several were quickly cut down by the wind blades as Naruto landed nimbly on his feet and quickly stood up and faced the alien forces carefully. They readied their weapons and aimed at him with the intent to kill. Naruto decided that now was not the time for words. Now was the time for action as he quickly took out one of his special kunai and made his move. The Hokage wasted no time and quickly threw the kunai towards his foes, and his target happened to be one of the aliens who was at the back. The kunai flew straight and true to the target, and that was when Naruto used the Hiroshin technique. The aliens and the heroes only saw a brief flash of Naruto's blonde hair and his glowing swords before he vanished, and they only saw brief flashes of gold and blue in the area where the aliens were. Naruto suddenly appeared above the alien he had targeted with his father's kunai, grabbed the weapon with his free hand and quickly driving a powerful heel kick into the head of the alien. Naruto quickly moved to attack with the kunai, which was soon coated in his chakra to stab into another attacker and spun hard to avoid a nearby alien's laser bolt. The weapon missed him and blasted the one he had stabbed with the kunai. He quickly rushed the alien and slammed a knee on the weapon to force it upwards, and he followed up with a powerful spinning back heel kick with chakra in the strike. The attack sent the alien flying as he was sent into several of his fellows. Naruto turned and rolled away as another alien came at him with blades extended to avoid a slash aimed to his neck. He quickly got up, slashed with his sword on the side while taking out his other sword to block another attacker. He quickly moved forward and lifted the alien off its feet, and as soon as it hit the floor, Naruto followed up with a stab in the face. Naruto readied his swords as he was soon shot at by the aliens, but he was not done as his speed was above par now with chakra being fed into the legs for increased speed. He moved as fast as he could and moved to the shooters and flipped over them quickly and landed behind them to cut them down with sweeping arcs with his chakra-enhanced blades. He then moved to stab the last one with both and then yanked both blades while flipping backward to avoid being attacked from behind by another alien with morphed hands for attacking. The alien turned to attack Naruto as he landed, but Naruto quickly leaned backwards and then moved to the side while kneeing the alien at the side of its own body fast and hard to send it away while quickly moving back up to then block another attacker and then pushing him back with great force and launching a palm strike with the frog kata to send the alien back. The blonde shinobi was able to hold his own for a bit more, and soon more of the aliens were down and out as he quickly lashed out with a surprising blast of pure wind on them. The wind struck like a whip of pure force and sent more of the aliens flying backwards. Naruto turned and saw Batman working quickly on freeing them, and he was happy for that. Some backup right now was certainly more than welcome since he was soon going to run out of senjutsu energy. But he placed his exhaustion aside as he needed to focus on the here and now as more of the aliens continued to attack him. He felt his nature chakra begin to run dry, and he quickly felt it being recharged as his last cage bunshin gave him the amount it had gathered earlier. He then moved to place one of his swords on his back in the sheath and attacked with one Odama Rasengan that smashed hard into a large bunch of the aliens who were about to shoot at him with their weapons. He managed to avoid the hits and land the attack to send them splattering all over the place, and that was that for them as he got ready for the next batch that was on their way to kill him. Kurama was ecstatic as he looked on and guided his partner. This was by far the best battle he and Naruto had been in for a very long time, and it was really making him feel very pleased. He had not yet been given the chance to join in, but he figured that since Naruto was doing fine on his own thus far, him coming to his aid was not needed yet. Batman looked at the battle as he worked on freeing the others. The Hokage's actions proved to be the key as the aliens did not attack the Dark Knight of Gotham as they were being kept out of the fight by the Hokage, and the shield that was on the converted ion crystal stopped the aliens from destroying the crystal. While he was freeing Diana first, he turned to see just what the Hokage's situation was, and he could see the blonde shinobi continue to hold his own and fight in ways that defied the conventional train of thought that one would have when seeing one who was supposed to be rather young. He certainly knows how to fight in such a situation. I wonder how it would have been had I been training alongside him back in my younger years. The rest of the heroes were also deep in their perceptions of the battle as the Hokage continued to take down more and more of the aliens while Jean continued to drag the Imperium into the light as its skin boiled and bubbled, making the leader of the invasion force shout out more and more screams of pain as sunlight ravished its form. How the heck is he moving that fast? Flash thought as even he was having a hard time following the Hokage's attacks as the former Hokage of Konoha cut down more and more of the aliens as if they were moving too slowly. Sure, he was fast, but he was not that fast in close combat situations where space was at a premium, as it were. Plus, that trick he did to only allow the others to see his blonde hair and those glowing blades was pretty damn impressive. He himself only saw brief glimpses of it. Whatever technique he was using was damn cool in his book. He looks like he's not even struggling to fight, it's almost like he's been doing this for ages. Hawkgirl was not lying as she knew how to fight with hand to hand as well as with weapons, and she could see that the man was very well trained in the use of throwing and melee ranged weapons as well, and it was like he had been trained in how to use them for a very long time. That was something she had to respect as she had faced few foes in her time back in the southern states who could come anywhere close to what she was seeing before her this moment. This guy certainly is anything but a kid. I've seen a lot, but this is certainly something else. Lantern thought as he had never seen anything like this before in his career, both as a Marine and as a Green Lantern. The way the guy moved and fought was too powerful and precise to be human, yet too fluid and natural to be a machine. He could be a cyborg, but most cyborgs like Metallo were not as fast or powerful as this guy. And there was no way that any cyborg he knew of could have powers like that. This Hokage seems to really fight like a seasoned professional. Who is he and who trained him to fight this well? Superman watched the way the Hokage moved, and he could hear the man's heartbeat and breathing. The man was breathing like anyone would in a fight, yet he seemed to be relaxed as well. There was no panic or any of the usual signs. This man was fighting like he had been doing this all his life, like it was as simple as breathing and eating to him. What sort of battles did this man have if it was even a man fight and to be this skilled? He was no pushover, but there was a precision in the Hokage's way of fighting that made him seem more of a brawler than a seasoned fighter, which to him was certainly new. By all the goddesses and gods who reside on Olympus, this man fights like he was born to fight. He and his fellow ninja must be truly skilled fighters to have reached that level. And that power he shows, Mala sensed it, and so have I. Where is he drawing such power? Diana was impressed by the way the man fought. Smooth, efficient, effective, and deadly. It was like a dance of battle before her. She had been trained by all the best trainers in the arts of war on Themyscira, yet this man fought like fighting was bred into his body and blood. She was very much amazed by his skills, and that was something as she was an Amazon and had been taught by the best. Whoever trained him must be very powerful and experienced, and she hoped to meet the Hokage's teachers someday. The reversed ion charge was now in effect as the factory unleashed beams of light out into the sky as the clouds that held the world under a cloak of darkness began to move away and reveal the sunlight once more. The end results were there as the aliens quickly sought cover and those currently fighting the Hokage pulled back, allowing him to use his shuriken and kunai in conjunction with his swords. Jean also managed to free himself from the Imperium's grasp and drag the creature into the daylight. The alien screamed in pain as the Martian taunted him while holding its tentacles, which had originally been in his own body. You hide underground and shun the light. Why? Does it burn your pale putrid skin? The alien screamed in pain as boils and steam came out from the alien leader as more sunlight fell on it, much to Flash, disgust as he spoke. Now that is a major case of super strong sunburn. It was not long before the heroes were able to get into the fight. Superman managed to get a charge from the Son of Earth and used his heat vision to free himself, and he quickly tore off a large section of the floor and raised it as a shield to allow Bruce to do his work, and he held it up. Just as Batman finally Diana, Superman freed Hawkgirl with his heat vision as well. She in turn freed Green Lantern. With her mace, Diana then freed Flash as the speedster was now on the move to attack the aliens as well. The other heroes joined in as Hawkgirl used her mace, Flash his speed, Diana her strength, and Superman his own strength and heat vision that tore apart sections of the building to expose the creatures to sunlight. Naruto spotted 3 other aliens moving to attack Stewart, and he quickly pulled out a spare yet smaller Fuma shuriken from his weapons pack, quickly expanded it and shouted to the Green Lantern. Get down. Stewart did just that out of reflex and saw the weapon sail over his head and slice into the heads of 2 of the aliens, and allowing him to unleash a powerful burst of his ring's energy in the shape of a wall shield, and quickly used said shield like a battering ram to send them back into the wall face. He turned and nodded to Naruto as John quickly went back into the fight as he blocked another barrage of attacks and cut down the incoming threats. The Hokage turned when his danger senses warned him of an incoming attack, only to see the Diana in front of him using her bracelets to block their attacks and send them right back at their shooters. The Amazon princess turned and spoke with a slight smile. Now we are even. Naruto quickly fired several of his kunai that were chakra-infused yet again while Diana, Superman, Hawkgirl, and Green Lantern took to the skies, ripping out holes on the building and ripping off sections of the walls to expose the rest of the aliens to the sunlight. It was here that the Imperium managed to free itself from the pain of the sunlight by shocking Jean into releasing him, and he escaped, leaving the Carter double to die along with the others. Diana spotted that and used her lasso to hold the ship down and keep the leader of the invaders from escaping. Superman was able to defend Jean alongside the Hokage, who used his wind techniques and his throwing weapons, which were chakra enhanced and loaded with explosive tags, to do the most damage alongside the Kryptonians' use of heat vision in battle. But the alien ship fired a beam at Diana, forcing the Amazon to block it and allow the aliens to escape. Hawkgirl, however, came on the scene and used her mace to stop the ship, allowing the fully recovered Amazon to catch the rope once more to prevent the Imperium from escaping just as a doorway was revealed from the alien mother ship. Diana yanked hard on the lasso and dragged the being back just as the Hokage came up to the plate and took out his father's kunai once more and aimed at the ship just as Hawkgirl began to attack once more. The Hokage fired the weapon and it allowed him to move close to the alien ship to make him smash an Odama Rasengan quickly into the ship's hull, which caused considerable damage to the vehicle just as Hawkgirl's next strike was the final death blow as Naruto quickly took out the kunai again and went back to the factory. The Imperium screamed in fury as its vessel was sent smashing into the factory and nearly crushing Batman, but Flash saves the Dark Knight at the last moment. The factory was about to blow and the heroes went to work saving the people trapped inside the same pods the aliens used, with Green Lantern carrying them in a bubble while the others flew out of the now destroyed factory. The cloud cover was gone and it seemed that light was filling Metropolis once more. However, the alien vessel was now trying to escape, no doubt abandoning its fellows and hoping to avoid facing the fate that claimed its leader. Diana was angry at this and spoke out. Those cowards are fleeing. The idea of letting these aliens escape her without a fight was a big insult to her. After knowing what these aliens did to other worlds, including Jean's own world, she was not going to let them escape without being punished for their crimes. Naruto, however, was not going to let the aliens escape without a fight. He knew that he was going to have to go all out and he hoped that he still had the chakra he needed for what he was going to do. He focused to gathering his senjutsu chakra, and as soon as he gathered enough, he then dug deep into himself to get the aid of Kurama for what he was about to do. He had done something like this before when he faced Nagato and Conan, but at the time Kurama and him were not exactly in the best of terms. Now, however, he and Kurama were on the same page as Kurama spoke to him. I know what you are up to, Naruto, let's do this. Right, I just hope that we do this right. The others turned in surprise when Naruto suddenly leapt forward to the nearest building and then summoned another set of cage bunshin, 4 in number, who began to move their hands to create what appeared to be similar to that same technique he had used in conjunction with Diana and Hawkgirl. The other two seemed to be sitting down and did not do much at all. But it was here that they noted a deep orange field of energy that came from him. It was faint, but it was there as well, and the energy looked alive. By Hera. Diana spoke out as she could feel a level of power coming from the Hokage and she could feel the same energy, only this time, there was a lot of it as well, and the others looked on as they tried to figure out what he was doing. Naruto pumped more chakra into the sphere. This by far was going to be the largest Rasenshuriken he was going to make in his life. If it had not been for his mastery of the Sage Mode, his literal decades of experience, and his alliance with Kurama, this move would have been downright crazy and suicidal. Already the sphere took to the size of a massive boulder, and soon the sphere was surrounded by wind. The sound was piercing and all the other heroes had to cover their ears as the sound was enough to make it sound like a host of human-sized screaming bats coming out of hell. Hawkgirl was quick to cover her ears the most, not an easy feat with a mace in her hands. How the heck is he doing that? Green Lantern was stunned as he looked to see the sphere appear. The massive Rasenshuriken was like a literal spiral of screaming blade-shaped wind. One of the copies of the Hokage who had been sitting down then disappeared in a puff of smoke and the sphere became even larger. The second one quickly got one of his special kunai and gave it to Superman and spoke. Fire this at the ship, Superman. Superman decided not to argue and do as Naruto instructed, and as he did so, the second cage bunshin disappeared in the same manner as before, and to their surprise, the two cage bunshin and the real Naruto vanished, only for the group to see Naruto actually appear above the alien vessel. The distance was high, but Superman saw it with his telescopic vision and he was stunned to see that Naruto was now on top of the alien ship while in midair. Naruto focused all of his gathered nature chakra and Kurama's purified power into the Rasenshuriken once more, increasing the size to that of being close to half of Gamabunta's form. He had already managed to get the kunai in mid-flight just by sheer luck, and now he was going to unleash the combination jutsu. He had never done this before, but if there was one thing he knew, his life was a compilation of events that had him doing things no one would dare dream of doing. The other cage bunshin each then moved away, and soon the chakra he had taken from Kurama in the past was now keeping the Rasenshuriken stable, while the other cage bunshin then did the hand seals and soon unleashed a technique he picked up from Itachi and with his partner's chakra and his sage chakra. In the mix, the 4 jutsu was going to be impressive. Kaiton. Gokakyu no Jutsu. The two massive fireballs were unleashed in that moment just as the two Kage Bunshin disappeared in clouds of smoke as the real one tossed the Rasenshuriken. Naruto watched as his Rasenshuriken soon merged with both of the Gokaku no Jutsu fireballs and soon formed into one massive fireball with fiery wind blades spinning around it. If that was not an impressive sight, he had no idea what was an impressive sight. The massive attack smashed hard into the ship as it was about to get out of the city and smashed on the middle of the ship, and just above the area where the engines would be. The sheer impact of the combined attack was spectacular as a veritable firestorm of destruction began to consume the ship's area. The sheer amount of chakra Naruto put into the attack was a feat no one in Konoha would ever see, and if they did, it would reinforce their faith in him as the finest Hokage the village ever had. The attack tore into the armor of the ship and also caused a large amount of destruction, and inside the ship, the aliens were running in pain and shock at the attack. More sections of the ship were being torn apart by the combined wind and fire chakra as it spread fast as the normal Rasenshuriken would have done in battle with regular foes. Any alien caught were torn to shreds and soon the ship exploded into two pieces. The fiery remains of the alien ship thankfully did not crash into the city of Metropolis. Naruto, however, was really tired and began to lose his focus to save himself quickly. Thankfully he was not alone as he was soon caught by both Diana and Superman. He looked at the two heroes and gave them a nod as he spoke with relief in his voice. Thanks for the assist, that move really took a lot out of me. Superman nodded at that as he looked at the now crippled ruins of the alien ship. I can bet it did, but at least we can deal with them and make sure that they can no longer harm anyone. Diana nodded at that and spoke. You have amazing power, Hokage. I have never met many people who can control that level of power outside of Themyscira. Are you sure you are not a demigod by any chance? Naruto laughed a bit at that as he had read up on that term when he heard of it and was curious what it actually meant since he planned to try adding it to his books. And while his ego was enjoying the idea of being called the child of a divine being and a human, he was far too old for such a term being used on him and replied. Nope. My parents were both human, Diana, but I am really going to need to rest. I am burned out for now and I can really go for some actual and authentic ramen, none of that instant ramen for a while, I've had too many of those. Diana had no idea what that was, but Superman did and laughed a bit as he replied. I know a good place you might find here, hopefully it's not too ruined, but we still have deal with the others of the Imperium. Yeah, darn it, no rest for the heroes, let's get this over and done with. It was days later after the heroes forced the Imperium back and they were now working out on removing the last remains of the aliens that were left behind. It was a great sign of relief to the people, but not everyone was happy with the situation. The military were talking about how they were all lucky, but they cannot let this happen again. They needed some way to make sure that if it were to happen again, then they would be ready for battle. In the Batcave in Gotham, Bruce himself thought it over and decided that now was the time to use something that he had been working on months before. The original purpose of the item in question was for space exploration and also for observation. But now the purpose was changed for defense of Earth. In a massive space station above the Earth, Superman could not help but feel a bit amazed by the looks of Earth while he and Bruce were in the watchtower. He knew that Bruce had his hands on a lot of things, and had the money, manpower, resources, technology, and know-how, but this was certainly up there in the list. Impressive. Are you sure that your stockholders don't know about this, Bruce? Batman merely nodded and replied. It's a bit of a line item in the Wayne-Tech Aerospace R&D budget, so it's strictly off the books for the duration. So in answer to that, no, it's not in the knowledge of anyone in the company, and I've already begun the paperwork on how to have this be given as a donation by Bruce Wayne to the cause of defending the Earth. This can serve as an early warning system area and also as a base of operations for all of us if we need to work in unison to help keep the world safe. The two turned as both Flash and the newly codenamed Diana were walking towards them with styrofoam cups in hand as the speedster spoke in a very amused voice. And it's got very well stocked kitchen, which by the way is wicked. Iced mocha by any chance, big guy? Superman sighed a bit and shook his head with a smile, as he took energy from the sun. He had no need to eat or drink, but he did like food. But he had a lot on his mind and food was not one of those things. No thanks. Suit yourself. As for Diana, she was still getting used to the taste of mocha on her tongue. She found it to be a totally new and different experience as she spoke. We don't have these in Themyscira. Flash grinned and replied to that. Stick with me, princess. There's a lot more you have to see. Perhaps I will. Flash grinned at that, and the two other heroes in the room were also somewhat thankful. They were soon joined by Green Lantern, and Hawkgirl. The former Marine then spoke to the two heroes. This is an impressive installation. Very impressive, but I get the feeling that there is more to this than just showing off this place. Superman nodded at that and looked at Earth, and as soon as he gathered his thoughts, he spoke to them. I once thought that I could handle defending the Earth by myself, but I was wrong. Working together we saved the planet and more. That's why instead of working separately, we can work together as a team to become a force that can help ensure that the ideals of justice and peace are better protected. Flash was amused and walked over to the Kryptonian and spoke. Work together, like a bunch of super friends. No offense or anything, but that kind of sounds a bit odd to me and a bit too cheesy. Superman smirked a bit at the humor there and replied. I was thinking more along the lines of a Justice League. It might not be as catchy, but the goal and purpose is still worth it in my book. Flash smiled even more and replied. You have any idea how corny that sounds, even worse than the Super Friends bit. He however then turned to face the others in the station and spoke. But I think Big Guy here has a point. Working together is a lot more effective, and with all of us behind, it can definitely be a good thing. Plus combining powers can be a serious advantage in a fight with the more powerful guys we are going to deal with soon, count me in then. Flash placed his hand on Superman's own as Green Lantern, and Hawkgirl did the same thing with the Green Lantern placing his hand over Flash's own, while Hawkgirl does the same thing with the two of them, showing their willingness to give this idea a chance. They knew that if they were going to deal with problems like this in the future, working together was better than going it alone, or even in pairs. I'm in, not too sure about this, but working together can really be a big boost in all counts. So am I. Diana looked a bit conflicted as she thought about what she was getting into. She had gone from her home to help Man's World, and not it was over, so she had nothing holding her back in going home. But the things she had seen in Man's World told her to stay for a while longer, and perhaps she could tell her mother what she had seen and what she had experienced in Man's World. She then decided to stay and then spoke. My mother would not approve of this, but Man's World is very interesting to me. Very well, I am in. The Amazon princess placed her hand on Hawkgirl's own, and then they turned to Batman, who was looking at the whole thing while being apart from them, with Superman spoke to the Dark Knight. What about you, Batman? Bruce replied in his own fashion. I'm not much of a people person, but if you need me, and no doubt you will, call me. I understand. Hold up, where's Jean? They found the Martian looking at a console where the image of Mars was. The alien retained his calm facade, but Superman could see that the Martian was not the least bit calm, and he could understand just why the Martian looked that way to his now devastated home world. Jean. Mars is dead and gone now, and I am the last of my kind anywhere. Jean, I know that none of us can take the place of your family at all, but we would be honored if you were to call Earth home. The Martian looked at the Kryptonian and smiled as they shook their hands, and as they came back to join the others. That was when Flash noted something was missing in this situation, or rather someone. Hold up, what about the Hokage? He helped out, didn't he? Green Lantern nodded a bit, and while he was not keen on the idea of having the blonde in the group, he had to admit having him in the group was a very good idea since he had a lot to offer the team. He was not alone as Diana spoke as well. Yes, his abilities and skills speak highly of him. It would be a shame to not allow him to be part of the League. I agree with Flash that he helped out in fighting the Imperium, so he too should join. Hawkgirl then spoke. But he left as soon as it was over, and it might be a while since Los Angeles is a big city, and none of us I think have been there before. Superman however smiled a bit and replied. I don't think looking for him is the key, all we have to do is be there, he will be the one to find us. In the outskirts of L.A. Naruto was tired and decided to remove his mask and get some much-needed sleep. The battles had been demanding and he was relieved that Los Angeles was not hit by the Imperium. Had they managed to get more of their factories all over the planet, then the battle would have been a lot more difficult for him and the other heroes, as well as tiring to the bones. Once the last traces of the aliens were gone, the blonde decided to go when the getting was good. It might not be nighttime here in LA as it was still mid-afternoon, but he was really in the mood to sleep and call it a day. There was no doubt the cops had the city covered, so no sense for him to go around for the night. His base, or rather current base, was actually a soon-to-be-demolished apartment condo that he had been able to take residence in and use as his base of operations when he decided to live mobile. Just like his temporary base in Gotham when he visited there, he had only to clean up the place, reconnect the place's water supply temporarily, and then make sure to only come in late at night, and he only relied on some portable gear to make his life easier while on the highest floor of the apartment. The gear in question included a portable heater for cooking food, some cooking utensils, electrical lamps for lighting, a portable TV with a portable power supply with satellite dish for cable connection, a radio with CD player, a portable ice box for drinks and water, a small portable electric fan, and finally a sleeping bed and some pillows. All of which he carried in sealing scrolls, so there was no way to trace any use of power. He also made sure to use the water only in the early morning and late in night to make sure that he did not take too much water to raise an alarm and shut it down when he did not need to use it. So if it ever came to a point that this place was going to be broken down by the city government, he could just pack up and leave, leaving not a single trace for the people to find him. So far no one had found him yet in his place, and he was happy for that. He looked at the pot filled with some sliced beef in water and herbs that was going to make a good soup to eat. Most people would have considered his living conditions bad, but he was not the least bit bothered by that. Once he was done cooking his food, he decided to eat his meal and go grab some shut-eye, but not before making sure to have his place lined up with warning tags and traps to get his attention. He might be living on the 10th floor, but no sense not getting ready for anything or anyone. He sat down and began eat straight from the pot and enjoyed the taste of food in his stomach. He also cracked open his ice box and get one of the drinks he had bought, namely a fruit drink which was melon. As he ate and drank, he felt his body begin to heal better and he thought to himself, "Man, what a long week this has been, but it was certainly worth it. HMPH, you still didn't ask to spar with that Superman guy. It should have been fun now that this whole alien invasion thing is overdone with." "Not now, Kurama. I am in the mood to rest and take a long breather before Carolyn decides to make my life hell again for not telling her where I was. Am I fine, and when am I coming back to work? You have any ideas how many emails I got from her demanding I answer her? And if she did not get an answer soon, she would fire my ass. The woman's a slave driver sometimes. Hey, maybe she is, but at least you like her, the very attractive editor who happens to be willing to publish all that crazy Ika books of yours, and that biographical novel of yours as well. Plus you and her have a very dynamic relationship. She might say she is older than you, but if she knew how old you actually were." "I suppose so. Anyway, that can wait. For now, it's time for some food." "Yeah, right. I still remember the time you gave her that copy of your first book and she looked at you as if you had lost your mind. Then she decided to see if you knew what you were writing, and well, we both know what happened. If she had any idea that you were older than her, then she might have realized the reason that you said what you said. Oh, that one I said about being the real cradle robber in the room. I got to agree on that one. Not exactly the kind of words one said to a prospective boss. HMPH. Be thankful she was willing to put you to the test and liked what she had seen and experienced. She also not in the mood to be married yet, and she's all right with the idea of hooking up with you without any demands and strings attached. Though that choice she made might change in the times to come, since you gave her a very interesting demonstration of your prowess, and not in the terms of writing either. For all you know, she might be willing to let you have some time with Catwoman and Poison Ivy if you be extra nice to her." Naruto chuckled at that and had to agree with Kurama's statement, but just as he was dusting off his meal for the day, his senjutsu senses were quick to pick up several signatures, and it was obvious to him who those people were. And it was also obvious to Kurama as the demon fox spoke in a slightly amused tone. "Well now, it seems we have company. What on earth are they doing here?" Kurama chuckled at the confusion of his partner and replied, "Maybe they have something to talk to you about, Naruto. Why not go and meet up with them to find out what's on their mind?" Naruto sighed as he decided to go out of the place he called home and moved to the roof of the building and decided to mentally allow himself to be detected so that they could find him. It was not long before he spotted one massive-looking plane, but his senjutsu senses told him that it was Batman who was flying it, so he relaxed as it was coming in. And he did not have to look hard to see that Hawkgirl, Jean, Superman, Diana, and Green Lantern were now coming in. Batman apparently moved to land his plane elsewhere as the other heroes moved to meet him. But just as the heroes went to him, there were explosions, the sounds of shouting, and a lot of moving about in the apartment complex. For a moment, the whole team of heroes panicked but noted that Naruto was not panicking and he told them why. Naruto already noted that Flash was not with them, so he might have taken the more direct route, right into his traps. "Don't worry, it's just Flash stumbling through my alarm system, he should be here right about." And sure enough, Flash appeared from the door and was covered in soot, coughing, some small tears here and there, plus smudges on his face. Naruto tried not to laugh at the look of the speedster, since doing that was not the best of ideas, but he did give a teasing comment. "Now, had an interesting trip in my maze, Flash." The speedster glared a bit and replied as he dusted himself off and spoke. "What the heck was that?" "My traps and alarms just in case I got unexpected visitors, and don't worry, the explosions were not that powerful and were designed to disorient people, not outright kill them. Though you had ruined my place, so moving again is going to be needed. Not to mention I have to work on getting all the materials I need to replace the traps you messed up." "I didn't see a single trap down there. What sort of traps do you use anyway?" "Not the kind you're familiar with, but I am a ninja, so my traps don't exactly count as the ones you normally see. You're darn lucky that you did not try that run, though some of the trap-loaded places have been to. Usually the traps in said places were less than gentle. You guys caught me when I was having a nice meal, so I guess I should invite you all in, but mind you, this place ain't exactly the kind anyone could consider roomy." In his home. And the League found out Naruto was not kidding in the slightest. He lived in an abandoned building and was the kind one would consider condemned and soon to be destroyed. The idea of someone like the Hokage living in squalor was something that none of them were expecting. Diana could not help but be appalled at the living conditions of the Hokage as they went into his apartment, as he called it. She had hoped to find him living in a more comfortable setting, nothing like this, and while it was clean, it was certainly not a place one lived in. She made that obvious as she spoke to Naruto, who was wearing his mask. How can you live like this, Hokage? The same was in the minds of the others. Even Flash had to admit that he was surprised at how minimalist Naruto's place was. That was after Flash managed to avoid the traps the blonde had set up at the lower floors, all of which involved flash bombs, smoke bombs, Senbon launchers, and some explosive tags that were not that powerful. Naruto shrugged and replied to that as he expected such comments. This place is only a temporary residence, Diana. I plan to leave this place soon enough and find myself a new place to call home, since this one's about to be destroyed anyway by the city government, so they do the erasure of my residence for me. And there are some advantages to living off the grid after all. What exactly do you mean by that term, living off the grid? It means that I don't show up when people try to look for me, I don't pay taxes, I don't have a permanent address, I don't have anything to trace back to me, and because of that, I can't be pinned down by anyone easily just in case the bad guys decide to look for me. Unless they decided to just go all out and then start tearing into the city building by building looking for me, which of course is bad for them in more ways than one. Plus they don't know what I look like since I always disguise myself. I pretty much live like a shadow, here 1 second, and gone the next. It's not pretty, but it helps keep me away from prying eyes, namely the ones who happen to want to put my head on the proverbial platter. Though the only reason I decided to reveal myself is that I worked with you guys before and I figured you were all looking for me, so why make it harder? Naruto then decided to sit down on the nearby chair next to the table that was left behind by the previous residents, who decided to just buy a new set, and replied with a smirk behind his mask. So, what brings you all here? Superman looked around and replied a bit. Once he had taken in a lot of details of the place, and he had no doubt that Batman had done the same thing. We came here to ask if you wish to join us, but I have to ask something. I noted all the stuff you have and I can tell that you did not steal this, since these items look too well cared for to be owned by someone for a long time, so that means you bought them. My question is, how did you buy those while living in a place like this? You don't sell yourself out as an assassin when you're not helping people, do you? The others were a bit worried about that. They had already seen him in action and his confession about being a killer before was still fresh in their minds. Naruto laughed a bit at that and replied honestly to them. Nope. I may be a ninja, but I don't go around killing people for money. If it was for bounties for wanted felons and crooks that the government want caught, I would try taking them alive, but I don't take bounty jobs unless I have to. Plus they don't pay as much, though I am interested in the FBI's most wanted list. And you already know that I don't kill unless I have to, Superman, so don't worry about it. Let's just say that I earn most of my money through what I write. That surprised Batman a bit and he made that obvious to Naruto. You write stories? Yep, and that's all I have to say. I am entitled to some secrets about myself after all. Let's just say that you'd be surprised on what you can make as a writer if you know a good story and have the imagination to go with it. And I usually happen to be very busy when I am not helping the police, so I pretty much do what I can. And just before you ask, no, I will not say who my editor is, since there is a thing about confidentiality. All I can say is that I get paid well enough to be able to live on my own, though I prefer the nomadic lifestyle for both personal and practical reasons. Anyhow, what's this you wanted to tell me about again? Superman decided to answer that question first. We wanted to ask you about joining us in forming a team to help protect Earth. I can show you the place we can operate from if you have the time. Naruto thought it over and nodded. All right then, give me a second to pack up my stuff. I always take these along wherever I go anyway. Plus afterwards I can get some much needed shut-eye, since I am dying to get some sleep. The other heroes watched as Naruto gathered his things together and then placed them on an open scroll with some rather weird writing. Batman could see that it was Japanese in some form or another, but he did not know the dialect. And the others wondered just what the scroll was for and why the Hokage was placing his things there. They got their answer when Naruto placed his fingers in a position and then in a puff of smoke, everything on the scroll vanished. Flash was the one to sum up the thoughts of the others as they saw that. Whoa, what the heck was that? Naruto grinned a bit as he wrapped up the scroll and tied it up and replied as he placed the scroll away into his pouch. That was a storage technique and this is a storage scroll. I can't really get into specifics on both technique and scroll as it is a secret I have no plans on revealing. But I can say that I just sealed the things I need all in this scroll for easy transport. I carry all I need in these scrolls and only I can unseal them and use them again. They don't weigh me down either, so no need to hire anyone to haul my stuff around, less likely that I leave a trail behind anyway. John whistled as he replied. Got to admit, that's pretty darn handy. Diana herself nodded as well. The technique was surprising and interesting to the Amazon princess as she had never seen a technique like that before. I agree, I have never seen magic like that before, even on Themyscira. The other heroes were also intrigued. Sure, there was technology that could store away large numbers of items away and even some magic, but the Hokage's way was not in either realm and different altogether. Batman had to admit that he had heard about some form of storage techniques in his ninja training days, but they were usually myths used by ninja to mislead their foes. This was the real thing, as there was no way all of the gear could be carried by one person without being weighed down or seen carrying too much. Superman had heard of such technology and had seen it himself, as well as some magic, so he was not too surprised, but since there was no sign of magical energy and incantation, this was new. Naruto laughed gently at that. Yep, and it complements my nomadic lifestyle pretty well. All I have to do is buy food, drink, fuel and clothes, store them away and off I go. I can store a lot in these scrolls too, but not that many and certainly nothing the size of a house. So where do we go from here now that I am all packed and ready to go? On the way to the watchtower, Naruto was like a kid looking at the world's largest merry-go-round as the javelin took its trip to space. He had never been up here before and already he was awed at the sight of the planet Earth as they moved away from it and headed to the watchtower. He was already old and had seen much in his life, but seeing a world from the viewpoint of space was a treat to him, and seeing the sun and moon the way he was now was worth it. If his wives were still alive or any of his friends were alive and with him, he wondered what their reaction would be. The other heroes, however, were utterly curious on why Naruto was acting like he was a real teenager. They noted his attitude shift when the javelin finally broke free from the atmosphere of Earth and how he was trying his best to get used to what he was seeing before him. Most of them had been in space before, and Bruce had been able to go to space when he had the watchtower built years ago. Superman obviously had traveled to space before for a number of reasons. John had been out for 15 years in space as Green Lantern. Hawkgirl had been fighting on other places before as a secret member of Thanagar's military, and John had been naturally an alien being, so being in space was nothing new. As for Flash, he had been able to see space before, so he was not all that impressed, though being on the Javelin and the Watchtower was a close second. The only ones who were awed by all this were naturally Diana and Naruto, the former who was still impressed by the sights even after being in the Watchtower for a while and sampling some of the things that man's world has, and the latter had never been in space before since his world's technology was nowhere near this level. Naruto turned to look at the Watchtower and whistled a bit at the sight while looking wide-eyed as John decided to rub it in. For a guy who said he was older than most, you're acting like a kid seeing his first live zoo. Naruto laughed a bit at that and replied. I am older than most, but this is all new to me. Later. Naruto was now in the very same room that the newly formed league had been made, and he was still awed by the facilities here in the space station. He was not kidding when he spoke to Lantern, as he had never been in space and in a place like this. He was dying to explore every nook and cranny of the place but decided to save that for a better time. Now here he was, facing the other members of the League, and Superman explained what he had envisioned in the formation of the League. Naruto listened and he had to admit that it was pretty interesting. In a slightly skewered way, it sounded like he was joining a more heroic version of Akatsuki. The group of S-rank ninja had been used as an outside force by other villages on occasion, and eventually they were the Shinobi Alliance's worst enemies alongside Madara, Sasuke and Kabuto. He had no love for most of the members of Akatsuki, with the marked exception of Itachi Uchiha and Nagato, due to them being mercenary ninjas for the fact that they had been hunting him and the others for years. He was not the least bit disappointed to send them all into the grave after hunting down and killing Kabuto. The League was similar, but they all were also protecting their own cities and came together to help defend the Earth better from all threats that might appear and support one another. This did not sound all that bad in his mind, and being asked to join was surprising to him in every sense of the word. As soon as Superman was done explaining the whole idea of the League and what it would be doing, he looked at the assembled heroes and he decided to say what he felt was needed to be said. I'm not all that sure having me around is the best of ideas. Don't get me wrong or anything, the idea of the League sounds very promising. But I have killed before, as you already know, and I am not adverse to the idea when the enemy becomes too unreasonable. You sure you want me on the team? Flash replied to that. Hey man, you rocked in that battle, plus you are pretty much alright, despite the fact that your little gauntlet of traps tried to turn me into a pincushion. Naruto chuckled a bit behind his mask and replied. Sorry about that, Flash. Why you decided to take the front door, I'll never know. Anyway, back to topic, are you guys sure about this? I mean, Lantern might object to that, won't he, since we were not on the best of terms? I might, but seeing as we are going to need all the hands we can get in this league, I can't exactly argue. Naruto thought it over a bit more and Kurama decided to speak to his partner. I think it's a worthwhile run, at least you won't have to worry about what might happen when the metahuman criminals might start appearing on your little city of angels. Plus being on their side is pretty much a good thing since they are all right enough. Besides, at least you get to be around those two ladies a lot more. So at least you don't have to waste time imagining doing things with them. Kurama, shut it. Quit pretending, man, you know I am telling the truth, but I think that we should at least tell them about a few things. I can bet that Superman deserves to know just how you figured out his identity, that way he can relax more. Or you can do that and then reveal the whole story. Does that include telling them about you and how we got here? That's your call, old man, not mine, and you know already the dangers of revealing secrets and the relief that some can get from revealing secrets. Knowing you, however, you might be able to turn them around with the truth and how you present yourself. Okay, I guess I might as well start by revealing just how I figured out who he was without saying anything. Alright, but before I give my answer to whether I joined this league or not, I think that I should be a bit more truthful about some things about myself. One such thing includes a question that I think is on the mind of Superman for some time. Superman raised an eyebrow at that and he guessed just what Naruto was getting at as the blonde confirmed his suspicions. You want to know how I knew about your most guarded secret, right, Superman? Yes, I had wanted to ask you that, but since you haven't revealed it to anyone, I can guess you are a man of your word. But why are you telling it now? Not all of it actually, I am only going to focus on just the important details on my side of the story. I am not going to break my promise to you after all, and I am a person who values promises. Anyway, when I first came to Metropolis, I had used a special jutsu of mine, taught to me by some very unique beings. They showed me the ability to sense a person's chakra level and power. I'll explain chakra later when I feel that you should know about it, but suffice to say I had developed the ability to sense chakra quite well, so when I used in Metropolis I was able to sense every person in the city's chakra, something of a precautionary measure habit I have been able to develop after some time. Superman was not sure yet, but as he began to grasp it, he then began to guess just how the Hokage was able to sense him back in Gotham. Batman was also intently listening to this and he began to see the meaning behind it as Clark spoke. You sensed my chakra as well? Naruto nodded. Yep, and I got to say, you have a really large amount of it and it was hardly the same to what I had sensed in humans. So I already knew that despite your choice of disguise and your human looks, you were hardly human. I tracked you down and then took a henge. Flash spoke next. Hold it, what's a henge? Naruto laughed a bit and just did the hand signs, and to the league's surprise, Naruto took the appearance of Green Lantern. Jean was surprised in a higher sense since it was similar to his people's ability to shapeshift. Stuart felt both surprised and annoyed that he was being used as a test subject by the blonde guy's action. Naruto then spoke, surprising the league further as he spoke with Stuart's voice down to the last detail. This is henge. This allows me to copy every physical trait a person has, from looks, clothes, skin tone, and voice. It's one of the many skills I picked up over the years and I was trained in its use for a long time. But it does have flaws, let me show you. He lifted up the hand that had the lantern ring and they noted that when he tried to focus on it, it did not react in the way it did with Stuart even when Naruto had Stuart's glowing green eyes when he used the ring. Naruto then placed his fingers together and shouted a bit. Kai. The smoke appeared and Naruto was back to his original form and he finished. I can only copy the physical things of a person, not the memories, powers, that sort of thing, useful for infiltration and misdirection, but not so much. It's not that effective either if you face high-ranking, experienced, and skilled ninjas since they can tell the difference. This jutsu is actually a very basic technique so anyone who was trained in the way I was can do it. Flash replied to that with a wide grin. Cool, now that must be one heck of a party trick, works wondered on missions too, huh? Yep, now back on topic for Superman, this is how I got close to you. Naruto then used the henge again and soon appeared in front of Clark in the same form as before and Clark was wide-eyed as Naruto grinned at him as he spoke. Curtis. Naruto then reverted back to his original appearance and decided to get serious as he knew that his next decision on the matter of his past was going to be deciding his fate with the rest of the league before him. You got it, Superman, that's how I figured things out in regards to you, but I did not do anything else afterwards. And through the same jutsu I was able to sense you when you were in Gotham with Batman and his crew. You were the only one with that chakra type in the whole city so I knew you were coming. I told you this to at least ease the question out of your mind and truth be told. This is just part of the things I need to reveal in order to know if you all are still willing to have me be part of the league. And if I feel ready, I can tell you about that trick you saw me use when I made more of myself. Jean could sense the turmoil in Naruto lightly. He did not pry deeply into Naruto's mind and he did recall that on occasion, he had sensed that there was something else in Naruto's mind. He had felt it before when he tried to use his telepathy to get his attention and his aid in fighting the invaders. Naruto then spoke to them in a calm but undeniably serious tone. There's a reason I am different to you here, and this I am not from around here, I come from a village that happens to be a very long distance from here. And you will not be finding it anywhere on the map of any nation and country. That made the league curious as Batman was the one to speak first. What exactly do you mean by that? It's because I come from a world that is nothing like yours. I am what you might call a totally different world. In the League's new base of operations. The new core members of the League looked at Naruto and could not help but try to grasp just what were the implications of such a statement. They all had experienced and seen some very strange and interesting things in their own times, but this was something new to them in a certain state. It was soon Superman who spoke to the blonde shinobi. You're from another world. Are you an alien like me, Supergirl, and Jean? Naruto shook his head and replied. No, like I said to you and Diana when you caught me, I was born between human parents. But unlike most of the humans here on Earth, my family and the rest of the people in my world, we all have the ability to use the energy you all saw me use, and some of the techniques that you all saw me use are actually common techniques in my world. I guess you could say that the people in my world as well as me are very different from the humans here. Batman then took over, as he spoke seriously. So your people are all metahumans. You know, I could never understand what that term is, but I assure you that we are human where I come from, though there are some exceptions to the rule. Can you at least tell me what a metahuman is so I would at the very least know what is it you guys are talking about? Batman decided to fill Naruto in on the details of what exactly a metahuman was and how they were created. Essentially, metahumans were created when people are changed through natural or artificial means to possess powers and abilities that normal people would not have. Batman explained that while a number of people who became metahumans used their powers for the good reasons, others used their powers for less noble reasons, and while some were misunderstood and did it only to survive, others used their powers for more cruel and evil reasons. Naruto listened in on the details and had to admit that in some ways, these people sounded like those with Kekai Genkai back in his world. And some of them sounded to be rather interesting, and he wondered if Pamela could be considered one, but he was not going to reveal to anyone that he knew her, of course, especially Batman. Having known of her files from what he had been able to glean, he had a very accurate idea that Pamela and Batman had a less than friendly history. And revealing that he knew of her was asking for trouble from the Dark Knight. He had no doubt he could take Batman on, but he was not an enemy of his, so he would gain nothing by doing so in the first place. So he kept that tidbit to himself, and when Batman was done, he replied. Well, I am pleased to say that I am not a metahuman, though I say that those powers sound similar to what Kekai Genkai do, which I think is a topic I can discuss for another time. What I can say is that many of the people in my world actually have what you could call a special circulatory system in the body that regulates chakra, and it's a natural occurrence as far as I know. Chakra is a naturally occurring source of power in the lands I came from, so it's natural that people can use it with a good deal of training. Diana was intrigued by that and made it obvious as she spoke to Naruto. Anyone can use it or are only ninja trained in its use. Usually it's ninja who use it, but there are others in different organizations who can use chakra, the samurai forces in one of the lands where I come to for example. But usually the samurai there channel their chakra into their blades to increase the length and even the cutting force of their blades. And it's not just men. If you are curious, Diana Heim, women in my land use it too, and sometimes they have far greater power than some guys. Diana was interested by that, and it was here that she recalled the title of sorts that Naruto added to her name. What does Heim mean, by the way, Hokage? You have used that term to me for a while now, so I was curious why you add that to my name. Oh, that means princess where I come from, and like I said before, I respect the fact that you are here to help fight the enemy even if you are from a culture that does not look too well towards men. Even more so as you are a member of royalty, Diana Heim, so I give your name a title that befits your status, but I can bet that the people are going to be calling you by another name soon enough. Naruto decided not to mention that he had actually been married to a princess before. There was no reason for him to mention Koyuki Heim at any time since that was private. Maybe when he finally felt comfortable enough to tell them everything about himself, he would do so, but until he knew them a lot more, some secrets were going to remain buried. The blonde shinobi decided to just let out the basic details about himself and keep the more sensitive stuff hidden away. Though that did not mean he was going to be too cautious and drop a few hints to make it a lot less likely that he was hiding something. I see. How powerful are the women ninja in your world? Naruto thought it over carefully, as he knew that talking about other ninja was not exactly something that was considered as sound thinking. Ninja always lived in the shadows, as was their name Sake, but he balanced it with the fact that he had met a number of ninja were not your average ninja. And he was possibly the most obvious example of that kind of ninja, since he was not the one to compromise his emotions for any reason. Powerful enough, Diana Heim. Kunoichi in my world are very powerful people, and some of them become highly regarded in both good and bad ways. Many of the Kunoichi of my world have all risen to high status in their own time and through their own methods. And some even become kage. Hawkgirl was curious and asked what that meant. What is kage anyway? Some sort of rank. Close to it, but before we get to that sort of discussion, I am going to explain some things about my world. Then we can get to the term kage once we get some of the details done and out of the way. The heroes listened and were surprised somewhat to learn that his world was almost the same as their own, but with a number of differences as well. There were such things as airships, television, electricity, trains, refrigerators, everything. But that was balanced off by no cars, no computers, no airplanes, no guns, and a few other things that most of them, with the exception of Diana, took as normal. There were forms of government that sounded more like what one found in feudal societies both in Earth's past and in other worlds, and the nations were differently named. It was enough to make them picture that Naruto came from a world that was both modern and medieval. Yet there were ninja in the mix as well, along with samurai as well as other organizations to boot. Naruto then told them about the different nations, starting with the major ones. There are at least 5 great nations: the land of water, the land of earth, the land of wind, the land of lightning, and the land of fire, where I come from. The other nation all have different names, some might sound a bit odd to you, but that's the way they are. Now each of the elemental nations are led by feudal lords, and the same goes for the smaller ones as well. In each of the major nations are hidden villages. Hidden villages. What are those? Naruto directed his attention to Jean and replied. Hidden villages are the ninja villages. They are where ninja are trained and operate from, both home and base of operations as it were. I can't tell you anything too sensitive about them, but what I can say is that each hidden village has a symbol to them and their names are synonymous with their symbol. In my case, the village I belong to, Kanhagakure, or the hidden village of the leaf, use this on out forehead protectors. Naruto then pointed to his forehead protector, and the heroes did see that there was a symbol that was like a leaf there. It was also here that Naruto recalled something that he thought about, and decided to ask just to see what was going to be the answer he was getting. That naturally involved Diana, since he felt this should be an interesting topic of conversation. By the way, Diana Heim, can I ask you a few questions about your people? Of course, but I won't answer any questions that can be considered dangerous. Fair enough. First, do any of your people ever age when you leave your home? Diana thought it over and replied. We do age at a normal human rate, but when we step back on the soil of our home island, the years we spent outside in man's world are removed and we return to the age we were in when we left. So in a sense we have some form of immortality. Okay, do you have children on your home? Not entirely, only I and my sister were born there, but on occasion there are some of us we were adopted due to unique circumstances. That's pretty much what I can say about that for now. Men are not allowed on Themyscira by Amazon law, though I do not know what it was like in the past. The other heroes were taking that in, and Naruto decided to speak as soon as he took the data in. He could not help but guess that if his perverted godfather and sensei found out about an island filled with women, he would have really wanted to go. And no doubt would have been reminded about that time he had tried to sneak into that village. The reason I asked is that I was curious about the Amazons, since there is a hidden village where I come from that seems to be somewhat similar to your home with some differences. That got Diana's attention and she made that clear to Naruto. What exactly do you mean by this village being similar to my home island Hokage? Naruto grinned and replied. The hidden village in question is called the Nadeshiko village, and the reason I can compare it to your homeland Diana Heim is the ninja there are all female. Kunoichi from Nadeshiko village are considered to be among some of the most skilled, experienced, and powerful kunoichi in their own right, though they are not above praising both male and female ninja from other villages. They reside near the borders of the land of water, and while not often seen, they are considered very capable indeed. The reason for them only having female kunoichi is that for some reason or another, they only have female children. I never figured out on the why of that though. You could say that they are my world's version of the Amazons, and they certainly know how to fight. Diana was intrigued by that. The idea of another group of women who were like her own people was pretty interesting. And if they had the same access to the kind of power Naruto had, it would not surprise her that they were very deadly fighters. She wondered briefly if it ever happened that one such woman of this Nadeshiko village came alongside Naruto, would she be able to speak to her? But she then recalled that there were some differences mentioned by the Hokage on her people and these kunoichi from his world. You said there were differences between my sisters and these kunoichi of your world, what are they? Naruto nodded and replied. For one, they don't have immortality, so they age and die like most people, though they certainly live a bit longer than your average person when not fighting. That's due to the rigorous training they undergo and the need for them to be the best physically and spiritually. Next is the most telling. They take men as husbands to have children, but their method is a little bit unique. You see, they don't just look for any man to be their husband. They look only for the strongest shinobi who can get their interest, and then they challenge him into a fight. If the man wins, then the kunoichi takes him to her village and he is her husband, so they can have strong children afterwards. If the guy loses, well, you can pretty much bet he'll get a quick death. That surprised the heck out of the league. Even Batman was a bit wide-eyed at that, and then Hawkgirl spoke. Wait a minute here, are you telling us that if the guy beats her in the fight, he becomes her husband, but if he loses, she has to kill him? Naruto nodded and Flash commented. Man, that is harsh. Superman was soon speaking next. That's not too far-fetched to me. I remember when I was challenged to a fight by Maxima, who was a warrior queen who wanted a husband who could best her in combat. Still, the part where the man gets killed if he loses to the woman is a bit extreme, isn't it? Yep, it was, though I do recall the law being changed somewhat over the years. Diana then spoke next. That is a bit odd. I cannot understand why they would need men that much, though I guess it makes some sense since they are not like us, so I will not judge them by my people's standards. Batman then spoke next. How exactly do you know this much about them? Naruto laughed a bit and sighed. I had my godfather and sensei to thank for that. You see, a couple of years ago, when my godfather was still younger and I was not born yet, he got himself involved with them. And let's just say that he did not exactly leave that good an impression. Though in his defense, he did not do anything too destructive, or so it went. Anyway, he managed to get away from them, but 3 days later, when he thought he could relax, he found himself facing one of them. And not just any Nadeshiko Kunoichi either, but the head of their village and the head of their entire ninja force. She was the strongest of them, and despite him escaping, she tracked him down in 3 days with no sleep or rest. My godfather, by the way, was a very powerful ninja himself, so he was challenged by her, and it took another day before both of them were placed in a draw. The valley they were in at the time was torn apart by them, so you can bet that the fight was intense. But eventually my godfather convinced her to stop, and they came to an agreement that if they met again, since my godfather was on a mission at the time, they would fight again. And if they did not meet, then a student of their respective sides would be the ones to finish the fight between them. So you can wager a guess just who got saddled with that promise. Anyway, I met the student in question, one named Shizuka, and her retainer Takiwa, when one really annoying suitor of hers tried to fight her again. I was supposed to let the matter go since it was not my business, but Takiwa sought me out when she learned I was a Konoha ninja, and then made the whole story clear on what happened to my godfather back then. Needless to say, I was pretty much shocked out of my skin when she told me that I have to fight Shizuka-san due to the promise mentor and my godfather did. And I will admit that had things been different, it would have been a shot since Shizuka-san was pretty attractive then. But I was not keen on the idea of being forced into marriage, even more so that I have to fight said woman. But I had no choice when I learned just what was exactly Shizuka-san's situation concerning the law from her retainer. Why is that? Hawkgirl asked, and Naruto replied. Turned out that she was against the law herself and was actually in love with a merchant guy named Sagiri who was granted entrance into the village for trade, and he loved her too. But because he was not a shinobi, their laws forbade from getting married the way they wanted to change that law, but then he was killed by some of the village officials as suspected by Takiwa, and Shizuka decided to train and never love anyone again. So even if she did follow the law, she was already dead inside, figuratively speaking anyway. I decided to fight her for a different reason, and while she thought she had won the fight, I had used a shadow clone. But things kind of went downhill when that nutjob suitor, named Kokuyo, came back and used a technique with his machines that Shizuka destroyed to control her like a puppet. I freed her and had a chat with her about it. Naruto smiled a bit at the memories that invoked, and when he finished, he replied. Suffice to say, when that discussion was over, Shizuka and I parted in amicable fashion, and after a few years we met again, and she was happily married and had changed the laws of her village. The heroes were silent at that, and then Superman spoke next to the blonde ninja. That was a pretty interesting tale, so where to from here? Right, nearly forgot that I was not done yet about the hidden villages and ninja. Well, like I said, the hidden villages are the homes of the ninja of my world, and thus, it's also a place for getting missions. But you can't just grow up there and be considered ninja, you have to be trained for that kind of life. To that end, every village has its own design for the forehead protector and their very own symbol as well. In each village, there's an academy that teaches children to be ninja. Jon Stewart was surprised by that and also angered, as he thought that the children were actually forced into being ninja. He was not aware that he was basing his train of thought on what he had seen both in his time as Marine and as a Green Lantern. You mean to tell us they took you in that academy as kids? Isn't that supposed to be wrong? Naruto was confused by that for a second or two until he answered it. Why are you getting so hot-tempered? It's the decision of both the child and the parents for the child to go to the academy. It's just like going to school here in this world or sending you kids to school. After all, if you're part of a hidden village, you can be just a regular person there and run a business and paid, or become a ninja. I wanted to be a ninja ever since I could walk, so I joined. No one forced me to be a ninja, you know. It's all up to the person if they want to be one or not, and many parents in my hidden village wanted their children to be ninja, so there was nothing against being ninja. Plus the payments were pretty nice and we did our part for the economy of the village, and you haven't let me finish. They don't teach you to kill or anything right away, you do that only if you are in combat and if it becomes utterly unavoidable. Most of the time, the academy instructors teach you about history, writing, map reading, political science, and also what are the various skills of being a ninja, namely in how to use chakra for all the jutsu we use, its natures, the various elements and the like. There are usually 3 branches we focus on being ninja, that being genjutsu, ninjutsu, and taijutsu, and there are more advanced lessons in weapons usage, coupled with other skills deemed needed for the lives we live. All students are usually required to show balanced or high levels of competence in all 3 categories, but there are some who excel in either one only or 2 of those categories. Once you learned enough, there is a graduation exam where the instructors grade you on everything you know, from the mundane to the various methods of using chakra, and of course your competency level in relation to the 3. If you fail one, it usually depends on the instructors to pass you or not. If you pass, then you get to be registered as ninja of your village, a portrait is taken, and you get the forehead protector. You become a genin after that, which if you want to know is a rank. I guess I should get down to the ranks next, which naturally includes what Kage means. The heroes were ready to listen as Naruto began to explain the ranks to them as what they had been able to hear so far about Naruto's world was interesting. Genin is a rank that is usually reserved for graduates of the academy. They are usually ninja who are assigned a certain number of missions of a certain rank level, and are only assigned to certain missions of a higher rank if they are possessing skills and experience that allows them to take part of said missions. What sort of missions would that be? Naruto thought it over and then replied. Usually light duties at first, picking up trash, cleaning up the place, helping clear out obstacles, helping take care of lost items, and animal rescue. What? Naruto's question was for a good reason as Green Lantern, Batman, Superman, and Flash looked at him as if he had grown a second head, complete with horns, or in his case, fox ears. It took a moment or two until Batman spoke to him. Your people who are ninja actually do that. Yes, what are you looking so surprised all of a sudden? It's not like the villages send newly graduated genin right off to the battlefield, which would be only done on very serious circumstances. It would be stupid to send rookies with no field experience and are not understanding of the need to fight and possibly kill. Besides, it's done to see how the team works well together. They usually assign the genin into teams led by a jonin who serves as sensei, so it's usually 2 guys and a girl in the team with the jonin being male or female. Usually, the missions genin get are E rank or D rank missions, and these are usually non-dangerous missions and are paid from the range of 5,000 to 50,000 Ryo. And Ryo happens to be the currency of my world. I'll show you guys a bill later, but that is usually the kind of missions we get, with C rank coming close to actual combat work and danger. Superman soon spoke next as he was still trying to wrap his mind around the idea of ninja being told to do gardening work. In his youth, he had seen movies that dealt with ninja and the idea of them doing gardening work and being paid for it was a bit alien. You guys get paid that much just for gardening work? That's fairly expensive. You might say that, but usually gardening is not that simple. Even cleaning trash means we might very well have to clean the entire sewer system of a city, for example, or also cleaning out the weeds in a nobleman's house. And sometimes, those kinds of missions could be converted into a cover story. We'd be hired as gardeners, only to be forced to defend our client from a sudden attack. Anyway, the rank of genin is just a rank, it does not demonstrate the personal skills and abilities of the ninja in question. I know of one old man in his 50s named Kosuke who was called the 10,000-year genin, and he is from Konoha. But the reason he remained a genin was personal, since he made a mistake in the past that got his teammates killed, so he believed that he did not deserve to be of a higher rank. But he trained like mad for many years and is actually one of the most skilled ninja I ever worked with when I was younger. Heck, he was a jonin level ninja and managed to wipe out several bands of ninja for a day or so by himself and only using his cooking gear, a hidden sword, and a blade he concealed in a compartment in his prosthetic leg. Rank does not denote skill and experience after all, it's the person himself or herself. Anyway, genin have to spend a number of years doing missions until their jonin sensei decide that they have what it takes to take the chunin exams in order to be chunin. Batman was the next to speak. Another rank. Yep, being a chunin is the best way to get new missions, and you can take a number of specialized jobs as a ninja. But the chunin exams are not for the faint of heart. You have to compete with all of the best and the most skilled genin teams from all the other villages, and the tests can make or break a ninja's career. You can take them twice a year and they are usually held at a different hidden village, though it's usually limited to the 5 major villages. How tough can they be? Naruto looked at Flash and smirked a bit. I don't really know how the chunin exams were handled in the other villages, but I can tell you what it was like when I took the exams in my village at 13, like my own team did. You have to be granted first a letter or recommendation by your jonin sensei, and when you apply, the first part is a written exam, at least 100 or so questions that can really make your brain ache unless you are a genius. The objective of that exam is to gather intelligence by any means that are needed without getting caught by the proctors, all of whom are usually specialist chunin or jonin instructors. And those said instructors are very brutal. You get caught even by an inch, you are out, and when you get kicked out, your entire team gets kicked out as well. The demands of it are pretty darn hard, and it can really be difficult since all one has to do to fail it for his or her team is to quit, get caught, or break. And believe you me, when my team and I took the exam, I've seen adult and teenage genin teams fail and drop away like flies. The objective back then was the need for intelligence gathering, since you have to remember that the intel you get can be the difference between life and death, success or failure. If you are willing to see it to the end, then you are in. But that usually is only part of it. On the next day was the more physical aspect of the exams. The teams that survive the first part now have to carry one of 2 different scrolls, and you cannot open the scroll you have or you are out. And the only place to open it was in a special tower deep in the middle of a forest, which by the way you have to reach within at least 6 days. Diana then replied. I take it that forest you speak of is not a regular forest. You got that right, Diana Heim. That place's official designation is unknown to me now, but we all know it by one name. The name in question is the Forest of Death, and believe you me, it lives up to the name. Anyone going there is going to be courting death at every step, since it's not just the wildlife you have to deal with, but the other ninjas who will try to take the scroll you have. They can't have the same scroll as you might, but if you have the other scroll, then all bets are off, and that means you have to fight them. Usually injury or death, as far as I recall, is a certified guarantee. The only way to avoid that is to give up the scroll in question, but that does not happen often, since the ones who are in it are not going to just give up the scroll, unless they are facing a really tough enemy. Stuart was really stunned by this, and yet he wanted to know just what was in this forest that gave it such a name. Why do your people call it the Forest of Death? Naruto began to tell them just what sort of creature and plant life inhabited the Forest of Death, and all of them were all dangerous, gigantic, poisonous, and at times, both at the same time. With a vast majority of the animals in question totally carnivorous. Added to that the danger of battles with other ninja, and the battles being no-holds-barred fighting, even to the death. It became obvious why it was called the Forest of Death to the heroes. Needless to say, all of them were silent and shocked. Batman was pretty calm, but even he was shocked by what he had just been told by the blonde ninja before him. And it was Diana who spoke. This time her tone was a bit more serious. And you, as well as your fellows at the same age of 13, went in there willingly. Yes, and before you react, we were also shocked by the dangers there, but that is why the Chunin exams are not for the faint of heart. And the Jonin sensei in charge has to be absolutely certain that the ninja he or she leads are truly ready for that position as Chunin. And besides, I was willing to do what I could to be a ninja, even if it meant losing my life, because that is how it is first there in my world. You might think we're crazy or insane, but every other adult ninja did the same thing we were doing when they were our age. Flash shook his head and replied. I know that we're not in your world, but damn, don't your parents even object? Naruto shook his head at that. Most genin parents were themselves ninjas, so they make sure that their children know what they are asking, and like before, it's all personal. Even if the parents of the genin are not ninja, they know that the life of a ninja is filled with danger when they get older, so they always make sure that their child knows the risks they are going to deal with if they take the Chunin exams. Though in this case, it's up to the genin themselves. Had either of us in our 3-member team chose not to take it, then the whole team was out, and we would have to wait for the next one. In my case, I was an orphan since my parents died. I did get some help getting by, but I wanted a better life for myself, and I had other reasons too, and I wanted to be a great ninja, so I took it, good and bad, and never looked back. My own sensei passed the Chunin exams when he was 11, so that tells you guys something of the kind people my kin back in Konoha were like. That made the league very silent, as they soon began to understand just what kind of life Naruto had to lead. And it also began to give them an idea of what were the events that shaped their blonde comrade into who he was. They decided to listen more as Naruto finally wrapped up his experiences in the Chunin exams. He told them that he had not cut it in the end, but he did not regret it at all. He had learned much about his team and himself, though he made sure that he did not tell them about the real reason why he failed the Chunin exams. He then explained that Chunin usually handled C rank to B rank missions, and on occasion even A rank missions, which were a lot harder and involved combat to a higher degree than the missions handed to genin. Though A rank missions were only given to Chunin with higher experience and skills, as most of the time it was Jonin who took them. Once that was over, he then spoke about the next rank. The next rank is Jonin, and while I am not really sure about the process and how it's done in the other villages, I do know that in my home village that it's the more senior Jonin who vote into having any prospective Chunin who pass the needed requirements to be Jonin. Jonin usually are the team captains and serve as higher rank ninja, and usually handle A rank and S rank missions, both of which are pretty dangerous, with S rank being the highest in terms of risk and terms of pay. That usually involves transporting highly valuable and sensitive documents, and assassinating VIPs who are dangerous to have around, and the pays at least 1 million ryo. Jonin are also divided into specialized teams determined by their skill and experience level as well as their specialties. Some are experts in intelligence gathering, interrogation, specialized teaching and more. They also serve as sensei to genin teams obviously, and those who are very experienced Jonin are the ones who serve in the Jonin Council. Jonin Council. Yep. As I said, it's a collection of all the known and high-ranked Jonin, and they handle more unique affairs in the village and form the Cage Council on occasion. They, along with the Cage Council, the Fire Feudal Lord and the Feudal Lord Council, vote on the next cage of my village if the current cage is either killed or unable to perform the duties of the office, which includes naming a successor after retirement, though that only applies to my village of Konoha. There is also a special force of Jonin that make up the Anbu. Anbu. They are the Black Ops forces of the ninja world. Every village has an Anbu force, and they are directly under the command of the cage of their village. All of them are Jonin, and while they do take missions like other ninja, their role is more unique and complex than regular ninja, and they are called in when a situation is critical. They also serve as cage bodyguards, special forces, elite scouts, and more. Anbu are also taught to use a special jutsu that incinerates their bodies to ash if they are in a situation where they cannot escape and capture is certain. The heroes were impressed a bit by that and also disturbed, and Naruto decided to speak once more. I guess I should get to the cage bit right. Superman nodded as he was curious about this. Does it have something to do with your own code name of Hokage? Naruto nodded and explained the details to the heroes. He told them that cage meant shadow, a fact Batman confirmed, and the term was only given to the highest ranking ninja of the village. Ninja who were considered cage rank were the best and had to possess a wide variety of jutsu in all three fields, had years of experience under their belt, and had done many things that have helped the village and its people as a whole. The position of cage was not hereditary, and thus anyone who can meet the requirements of the cage position can be placed there. He did point out though that a cage must also possess a love and bond with the village, its people, and its beliefs, so if the person does not have that bond, then he or she cannot be cage. Once voted into the position, the cage had to be responsible for every detail of the village, upkeep, salaries for the ninjas from Jonin to Genin, finances, missions to be taken to the appropriate teams, and the sort. Kind of like the president of this nation of the US. Only difference there was that the cage was by heart and tradition a warrior, and if the village was attacked or in a dire situation, the cage would step in to save the village and defend its people. So Naruto phrased it well by saying that the cage was a warrior king or queen in royalty terms and led by example in the front lines. This made the heroes a bit more than interested, and both Diana and Shara approved due to their warrior cultures. The cage could also approve of missions by all clients who can afford to pay the fees of the ninja. It did not have to be clients from their land as well. Other nobles from the other nations could hire the ninja, but this usually led to competition between villages. He also explained there to the heroes that since there were 5 major lands in the elemental nations and the 5 major hidden villages were there, then the cage were named after the lands as well. For the land of water, the cage there was called the Mizukage or water shadow, the cage in the land of wind was called the Kazekage or wind shadow, the cage in the land of lightning was called the Raikage or the lightning shadow, the cage of the land of earth was called the Tsuchikage or earth shadow, and lastly the cage of the land of fire was called the Hokage or fire shadow. That made the heroes take things in slowly, and Batman finally decided to speak to the blonde before him after he mentally stored away those details for further study when he had the time. So you carry the name Hokage as a way to honor your village and its leaders. Naruto grinned and knew that his next series of words was going to really throw the league into a bit of a loop. That's part of it, but the other part is that I was a former Hokage myself. Like I said, the title of Hokage is earned, not given on a silver platter. I led my village myself before I retired and passed on the title of Hokage to my successor. I still carry the name as a sign of respect of the office I dreamed of holding since I was a kid. That got their attention yet again, and it was Stuart who was the first to speak. You lead your village. You've got to be kidding us. I take it the comment about me kidding you all about me being the former leader of my village is because I look like a teenager to you and the others right now. Hate to disappoint you, Lantern, but age has got nothing to with rank, and don't forget that I said that I was older than I looked when we met. My friend Gaara, Kami bless his soul, became Kazekage at age 15. And my Jonin sensei Kakashi became a Jonin at age 11, so don't judge me by looks alone. I might not look like it, but I led my village for a number of decades before I finally retired and gave my place to my successor. If you are curious, I'm already a century or so old. And how do we know that for certain? Naruto expected that from the incredulous way Stuart was looking at him, and he directed his attention to Batman. You happen to have a device here on the tower that can determine the age of a person by a blood sample, Batman. The Dark Knight nodded and took out a slide and a needle and moved to Naruto and gave it to him. Naruto pricked his own finger and placed the blood on the slide. Batman then took the slide and then headed off to the device in question. It was a portable medical scanner that scanned the exact age of a cell to determine the age of the organism that it came from. And as soon as the results were in, he placed it down and plugged in the results into a slot. Soon a data stream came in and there were the results as Batman spoke. The scans show that your cell's exact age is at least that of a century, so you are a century old. Naruto grinned a bit and replied as he looked at Superman. Give or take a few months actually. Now you know why I did not like it when you called me a kid, Superman. Apart from Jean and possibly Diana Heim, I'm the oldest guy here in this whole room. But don't call me an old man either. That is twice as offensive since I am still physically a young man. Just call me a man who has aged well. So if anyone here makes a crack at me being an old man, you and I are going to be meeting in the practice mat. Diana could not help but raise her eyebrow at that and spoke once more, her interest growing even more as she was trying to wrap her mind around the idea of a man who was a century old or so, yet looked like a teenager or young adult man. But how is that you still look so young, Hokage? Naruto thought about it a bit more and decided to give some data on his family tree. It was not like he was ashamed of his family line. He was utterly proud of it and had high respect of his clan for their willingness to carry the burden to help others. That's got to do with the fact that I belong to a clan with what you can call a Kekai Genkai. And I think now is the time I explain that since I said I would. Kekai Genkai is a term for the genetic traits that make a person possess abilities that are above the norm of regular people. I can say that in a sense, those very same powers are similar to the powers of metahumans. Only difference there is that Kekai Genkai users are unique due to the variety of their abilities. Naruto began to explain some of the more interesting details of Kekai Genkai, how those with Kekai Genkai could actually fuse two chakra elemental types together to create new elements. He also explained that Kekai Genkai also was not limited to fusing elemental chakra. There's a particular branch of Kekai Genkai known as Dojutsu which has to do with techniques that involve the eyes. One such clan that has that is one of the noble houses in Konoha, and that was the Hyuga clan. He explained to the team just what was it that made the Hyuga clan famous in Konoha and to other villages around the world where he came from, but he also made sure to mention that they had been subject to attacks by others. The attackers sought to capture the Byakugan, which was the dojutsu that made the Hyuga clan famous in the land. He however did not mention that he was actually the husband of the Hyuga heiress Hinata Hyuga. That was one bit of information that he felt they did not need to know about just yet. Once he was done with explaining some of the functions of Kekai Genkai, he moved to his situation. Anyway, my clan is the Uzumaki clan and we were famous for several things. The first was the reason for my long lifespan and that of the others in my clan. The Uzumaki clan members were all gifted with a remarkably high level of vitality and stamina, which translated to having a much longer lifespan than your average ninja. The vitality and stamina of my clan got to the point that the hidden village founded by the clan was called the Villages of the Immortals. A bit of a stretch to be sure, but it makes some sense since my mother's people have been around for a very long time. We will eventually die, but we will have a very long life before we get to that point if we are not killed first. The heroes listened as Naruto continued. The second reason is that due to our very unique stamina and vitality, my mother's clan also happened to have some level of unique healing abilities. I'm not too privy to the details, but one version of that unique healing ability was that by being bitten, some of our clan could transfer healing energy into another person. That might sound a bit sadistic, but the method can actually be able to heal injuries that by all rights could kill normal people. There are some other healing techniques my mother's clan knew about, but I do not know them all. The next and the last was our clan's mastery of fuinjutsu, or the ability to seal away anything. And when I mean anything, so you can bet that my mother's clan earned quite a reputation back in the day. They used their fuinjutsu to fight off powerful beings and to also move things through space and time on occasion. But because my mother's people were so famous for this power, other villages with the exception of Konoha, whose ruling clan the Senju were allies and distant relatives of my mother's clan, feared the power they had, and destroyed our village, hunting all of us down as well as destroying the land of whirlpools. That reminded Superman somewhat of the destruction of Krypton, even though the circumstances were different. That made him feel a bit more connected to the blonde shinobi since he too had lost his homeland, though he suspected that things were different for their ally. Most of the clan scattered after that, and my mother was allowed to reside within Konoha, so it became her home afterwards. And you can guess the rest from there. The heroes remained silent as they took in all the details until John spoke. So these Kekai Genkai users were well received in the villages. I mean, people with abilities like that Hyuga clan must have been pretty much welcome. Naruto then sighed as he replied. Not all Kekai Genkai users were welcome though. In the land of water, before a good ally of mine became Mizukage, anyone who was suspected of having Kekai Genkai were tracked relentlessly and killed, even if they were children. It was well known the ninja and villagers would actively purge those with Kekai Genkai and hunt them down to the death. That shocked the heroes as they would have never ever condoned such an act. Diana was the most offended and replied. But why would the people in the land of water kill children with Kekai Genkai? No one has the right to kill children like that for something that they cannot help but be born with. Naruto nodded and replied. I know, and I agree wholeheartedly with you, Diana Heim, but there is a reason behind it. You see, the land of water was always locked in conflict, so many people were killed in these battles, and a lot of those battles happened because of those who had Kekai Genkai. One clan in particular, known as the Kagaya clan, were famed for their lust for battle and violence, so much so that they willingly let themselves be annihilated just for the chance to fight and spill blood. Superman was shaking his head in disbelief at the thought of a clan of people allowing themselves to be hunted down and killed just for the thrill of battle. It sounded completely wrong. They willingly allowed themselves to be killed. Exactly, Superman, and they killed many people before they were hunted down, so naturally it was enough to make many people in the land of water hate people with Kekai Genkai. So as much as I don't want to say it, the people who were part of those purges were not entirely wrong in their actions. Batman had to admit that it made some sense. A lot of people might like metahumans, but not everyone felt the same way. Even he did not fully trust Superman, even more so when he was taken by Darkseid and brainwashed. But had Superman done it willingly without being controlled, it would make sense to be very wary. Naruto however did not mention the details pertaining to Haku and Zabuza, which was one story he had no interest in talking about. Both of them deserved to truly rest after the war, and it had made him angry at Kabuto for his part in bringing them back. John then spoke what he felt about this discovery. Sounds like your people all mold you into real killers. Most people I know of here would call those people in your world criminals in letting kids into a situation like that. Naruto snorted a bit and replied. Not all ninja in my world are assassins, you know. As I said, genin are not sent into battle without them getting more used to fighting, and there are plenty of other stations ninjas take part in. One example for all villages are medic nin. These are ninjas who undergo intense training in healing jutsu, human anatomy, medicine, the study of medicinal plants, and more. All of which was focused on medicine and treatment. Most medic nin are healers and therefore don't serve in the front lines, unless they are part of a team and they are in the field, and as such, they were not allowed to fight and only fight if the situation becomes such that combat is unavoidable. That does not mean that they are entirely healers though, some of them can use their healing training and knowledge for be poison masters. I know of one old woman who was a medic nin who was named Shio-san, who was the most skilled poison maker in the elemental nations. And the one who she had a rivalry with was the former Kage of my home village, that person being Tsunade Senju, and who was a mother figure to me, apart from being related. If you like I can show you what she looks like, and the only other female Kage I knew of when I was Hokage, the Mizukage Mai Terumi. The heroes watched as Naruto summoned two Kage Bunshin, and then the two spoke the word. Henge. The two Kage Bunshin turned into two female kunoichi, and dropped dead gorgeous ones at that. One was a blonde kunoichi who wore a gray kimono top, black skin-tight pants, high-heeled shoes, and she was a very beautiful brown-eyed woman who had a mark on her head. The next woman was in deep blue clothing with blue nail polish. All in all, the transformed Kage Bunshin were now in the form of two drop-dead attractive women who were also rather well endowed. That fact made Superman actually look a bit embarrassed. Flash could not help but whistle in appreciation. John raised an eyebrow, as did Diana and Shara. Batman looked the same as before, while John was still trying to wrap his brain around this. Naruto then explained to them just who the people were. He told them that Tsunade Senju, the blonde one, was the foremost medic nin in the world and had mastered a variety of healing techniques and was known to be a fine cure specialist for various types of poisons, as well as making drugs for medicinal and interrogation purposes. And she was also considered to be one of the strongest women in the ninja world. In fact, he took a bit of a feel for it and replied she would be just as strong as Diana herself. That was something that surprised the Amazon princess, and he then explained who Mai Terumi was and what she did as a Kage, though he did not tell them that he was married to the woman in question in a political marriage. Once that was done, he had the Kage Bunshin revert to normal, much to Flash's disappointment, and they poofed away, and he spoke about the fact that also some medic nin served in the science and veterinarian professions in the village, though in different ways. Once he was done, he also spoke about the ninja couriers, or in the tongue of this world, the ninja postmen. Flash could not help but laugh a bit at that bit of information, at the idea of ninjas who delivered the mail, and replied. Ninja postman. You're kidding, right? Naruto snickered a bit and replied. I wish, but being in the world I came from, you do need to be extra careful. So unlike the postmen in your world who don't risk their lives, unless you consider being attacked by dogs and irate people a risk to your life, courier ninja are trained to fight and evade any threat. We do have ways to send messages back and forth, but courier ninja are just as fast, and the guys who make up the courier ninja group are pretty darn good in their work. I know because one time I tried to recover a package I accidentally sent from one of them. And boy, that guy made me work for it. I was a kid then, but damn, they were tough to deal with every now and then. Anyway, there are also the other unique ninja groups such as the Hunter Nins, or the Ninja Undertakers as we call them. Jean spoke next. And what do they do? Hunter Nin are specially trained ninja who are tasked to hunt down and eliminate rogue ninja who are not of Kage rank and terminate them. They also make sure to destroy the bodies and take the head. That might sound disgusting, but the head is for proving the target is dead, and the bodies are destroyed to prevent anyone from finding out the village's secrets. Secrets that I am afraid to say cannot be revealed to any of you. I might be in a different world, but I will keep to the rules of my home. Suffice to say, they are needed on things like this. There's also the cooking ninja who are only seen as part of the land of lightning. Don't laugh, they are named as such since they happen to be able to wipe up meals that can sustain people for days to nearly a week. But as far as I know, they are not often called in since their cooking can really make people fat. I dealt with a few in the past and they can be a real hard bunch to deal with. Naruto sighed once more and relaxed a bit until he continued. Anyway, I am not all familiar with the positions taken by other ninja, but I will state that this is how it is on my world. Some of you might not like it, or outright think it's nuts or morally wrong, but that is how it is there. But we did achieve an era of peace and all the villages were working well together. I was Hokage at that era and my people were happy, safe, and enjoying the future, and so were the other villages. Sure, were still some conflicts, but at least we all can be united under one flag as shinobi when it comes to that. The real threats we have in times are renegade or missing ninja, especially those who are S-rank ninja. S-rank ninja. Naruto nodded to Shara and replied. All ninjas who come from the hidden villages wear their symbols of their villages openly to show their loyalty and origins to others. Renegade or missing nin on the other hand serve as bandits and raiders of the highest order. They sell their services to the highest bidder regardless of the missions and the risks, and they have no loyalty to any village. In fact, a vast portion of them are usually written into the bingo book, which is similar to the most wanted here in the US. Enemy ninja or people who have a negative history with other nations are usually registered there and have bounties on their heads to boot. S-rank ninja who are criminals are also prominently figured there due to the various acts they committed and are usually banished as a result, and therefore they are the ones who are listed the most in all the bingo books and have a high bounty on their heads. Even my village had a number of missing ninja in my time, and a number of them were S-rank ninja. The most dangerous group of S-rank ninja were known as Akatsuki. The Red Dawn correct. Naruto nodded at Batman's comment and replied. All of them were S-rank ninja criminals from various villages who made themselves into a 10-member group, usually with 2 of them working together. These guys each were highly skilled and dangerous ninja with very potent abilities at the time, and they were undeniably dangerous. One such person of that group I knew of came from Konoha itself. His name was Itachi, and while there was more to his actions than most had realized before, he was accused of slaughtering his entire clan, even his parents. What? Why the heck would he do that? Naruto sighed and replied. I had no clue at the time, but I can say that there was indeed more to it, which I am not going to talk about. Suffice to say the ninja who made up most of Akatsuki were terrorists and murderers, and I personally fought some of them as well in combat. Another topic I will not speak of for reasons that are my own. It's that I don't trust you all, but like they say, we all have our own secrets, and some secrets have to remain buried for their own good. Flash then spoke next. Okay, so can you at least tell us how you got here to our world? Naruto then told them what happened in the mission that he was on after he left the village when he retired from being Hokage. They listened carefully, and as soon as he was done, the blonde shinobi finished it all off with a simple message. I don't know how it happened or why I came here, but I am willing to make the most of it, and I hope that what I said to you all can be understood. The League were silent for a time, and Superman spoke next. It's given a lot of things for us all to think about, and I am happy that you told us those things, and we'll respect your secrets, Hokage. So, I need to ask you this, do you plan on joining us? You might not be part of this world, but you did help it out many times now, so we could certainly use your help. That sounds about right, and truth be told, even though this league you guys mentioned kind of resembles Akatsuki in a way, I am pleased to know that its purpose is more noble and for a greater good than most. Okay, I am in. Batman remained silent as he decided to make sure to keep tabs on the blonde shinobi. There were still plenty of secrets there, and he wanted to know those that might be dangerous. It was risky since he had already seen some of what the blonde could do in battle, but he had to always keep himself at the ready for anything. However, he did have one concern in his mind, and he decided to voice it out. There is one thing we do need to know. If there is a way to send you back to your world, Hokage, would you take it? Naruto looked at Batman and could tell that it was a serious question, one that he himself thought about a lot on occasion. He had no doubt that if by technology or by magic, there would be a way to go home, but he did know that he had already done so much there in his world. So many things had been done, and the people back home were now free to do what they wanted and have peace in their time. Many of those things were accomplished by his friends as well as himself, and he had lived a good life, so where did that leave him? The blonde was silent at this, and so the other heroes were waiting for the answer. They needed to hear what he had to say, so at least they were sure that he did have any intention to stay here in this world of theirs. But they were also willing to help him go home if he wanted that as well. They were not going to force him to stay since he had done a lot of good things for his people, and if he wanted to go back to help them, then they would indeed help him. Naruto then replied to Batman's question. Thanks for the offer if you could do it, Batman, but I think that my time in my world is done, so I will not go back. And before you ask me why, let me explain. My life in my world is complicated, and it was hardly easy. There had been times I had been pushed to the point I wanted to leave. But I never gave in to those feelings and fought to make a name for myself, to prove that I can be strong for myself and others. I also met good people there, people who I cared about in life, and made living a lot more beautiful. I had to struggle hard to reach my dreams and keep getting up no matter how many times I was beaten back, down, how many times I bled, or how many foes I had to face. My life back home was filled with happiness, sadness, victory, defeat, pain, healing, loss, gain, and more. I accomplished my dreams and helped bring a peaceful world to those who would be the kings and queens of my world after I and those of my generation were gone. So it's to those men and women back there in my world and my village that I entrusted the future, good or bad. After all, it is the duty of the ones who have the ability and power today to make a brighter future for those who will succeed them, and it is in those same people that the future is built on. That is why I retired from being Hokage. My time is over and their time is now. I have taught them all as much as I could and I have to let them decide their fate. Naruto sighed a bit and finished it off with a grin. So no, I will not go back to my world, not because I hate it, but because the future I and my friends, family, and allies have fought for is now the present and the future is in the hands of the new generation. That to me is what a hero is. Heroes don't do the things they do for glory, honor, fame, prestige, or for just the thrill of it. They do it for the simple reason that they can give a better future for those who will one to succeed them. That might not be what drives others or any of you, but it is my nindo or my way of the ninja and I have kept to that code all my life. If I can do the same for the generations here in this world, then I will do it. And I think being with you all can make that task a lot more fruitful, not easier since we're all different people with our own way of doing things, but that is what defines a team, right? Superman laughed a bit that as he sensed the truth there and so did the others. Flash had to comment a bit in a cheeky way as well. You really sound like a tired old man like that Hokage. Naruto mock glared at Flash and replied. Be thankful for the fact that I like you Flash, otherwise this old man is going to give you a serious whipping for that remark. Flash laughed and replied. You're on. It took some time before the decision was accepted and Naruto realized that he was part of a team again. It felt nostalgic as it were, but he did not mind it at all. Being with a new team was certainly an experience and he had learned firsthand that it all boiled down to how well they all worked together that would make or break the team. And considering who he was now going to be working with for the duration of his time here in this world, it was hardly going to be boring. It was also here that Bruce decided to get into planning something for Naruto, namely in the sense that he would be needing a place to call his own and also consider home. His nomadic lifestyle made sense to Bruce, but he wanted to give the guy a more permanent place of residence, yet was off the grid. And he now had an idea on how to do just that and he also had a feeling that he can find the right place to set up the place in question. In the Santa Susana Mountains. Naruto could not help but whistle at the sight before him and he was pleased to know that it was all his, at least it was the way he was going to feel. He looked at Batman and spoke to the man he was looking at him and spoke in a very curious tone. You actually asked that guy Bruce Wayne to buy this parcel of land. That guy's got some serious finds I bet. Quote. That he does. This place will be officially listed as a plot of personal land under the Wayne Foundation which will not be exploited for any reason. This place should be a good place for you to call home, though I will need to convince him to buy it and seal the deal as it were. But the only thing I need to hear is you saying that you are all right with this place so I can help make the deal final. He's also considering letting you use of their warehouses near the city limits to be the place for you to move into the city and out of the city before you go home. Naruto grinned at that and decided to ask again. Is he going to be all right with that? Batman gave a slight smile and nodded a bit. He did pay for the watchtower and all the technology on it, so that should tell you something of his willingness to help the League. Mr. Wayne's a philanthropist and he feels that helping the League is in turn helping others in the world. Okay. Man, I got to meet this Wayne guy myself. I saw him on TV a few times when I dropped by your city but never thought he'd be willing to pay for the whole thing, especially this sweet place in the watchtower. He deserves praise in my book, and coming from me, that's something. Batman did not say anything as he looked at the blonde who went back to looking at the place over. He knew that it would dent his finances a bit as Bruce Wayne, but compared to maintenance costs of the watchtower, the fleet of javelins, the supplies and whatnot, buying this plot of land as private property was not going to be much. This place was not owned by the government and it was private land and well away from the city, so to give the blonde Hokage some privacy. Plus it was usually woodland and not much for habitation. Most people would think that its purchase was just on a whim. But the land he had purchased was actually good land and could be made a place to live, and he had made plans to have the place walled off and made to withstand some of the wildfires that are known to move around Los Angeles. There was enough flat land on the plot to have a house and he planned to make the place self-sufficient in terms of water, and also there was a place that could be used to set up a solar power bank for electricity. Once Naruto agreed to the land he was going to call home, which was not too far from Los Angeles, he would have supplies brought into the place to build the house and have the house made in a way that would suit Naruto. But all of that could wait as he needed to see what Naruto thought of it, and he was also going to show Naruto something else. There might be some ruffled feathers by the more radical environmentalists who might assume that he planned to make a factory there or even harvest the place, but he felt it would be all right. He had a feeling that this place was going to be all right in the blonde's hands, since the blonde was more used to living in his own fashion. And from what he had seen of the blonde's way of life, he was not averse to living by himself too many times. The blonde turned to face Batman and nodded in approval. This place looks about right, and at least it's connected to the highway that can allow me to go to the city as soon as needed a few miles out. You can tell Bruce Wayne that I am all right with his offering of the land for me, and tell him that I'll make sure to thank him in person when I meet him. That of course will have to be one of those private meeting types. Did he promise not reveal to anyone this arrangement between you and him? The Dark Knight nodded at that, and soon the arrangement was made. Naruto would still remain in LA until the new house was built under his directions and how he liked it. Naruto already had a house design in mind, and as soon as he told Batman about how he wanted the house to be and look, the Dark Knight nodded in agreement. Though he did decide to speak about something else as well, since building a house in the middle of nowhere and keeping it hush hush was not something he considered as easy. How long will this new place take to set up? Batman replied. Not too long. Bruce has some good friends who help him and keep silent about things like this. 3 weeks to a month or two later. Naruto could not help but smile once more at the sight of his new home, and he had to give credit for Bruce Wayne for being very thorough in getting a place for him to call home. The house was very much like that of a large Japanese mansion and was built up to the standard of any Japanese traditional house, and could fit a large family if needed. It was a bit much to be sure, but it was something that he wanted, so no sense complaining about it and how it was made. He moved in and looked at each room carefully to take in the details. There was obviously an open area in the middle of the compound that would be something of a training area, along with a few rooms on the sides. One was something of a meeting hall, another a dining area with traditional Japanese furniture, next was a kitchen with all the amenities of a well-maintained kitchen, a freezer for food and drink, as well as a few other things. Next room was obviously a bathing area and a place where water could be channeled to make into a hot spring in it, and also a changing room. There were also other guest rooms, at least 4 to 5, and had all the things needed, including futons and regular beds found in any Western household. There was also a place that seemed to be bare, but Naruto decided he could find a use for it later. The last was obviously his personal room. It was not too lavish and had only a bed which was very comfortable in design and feel, a table with a few chairs as well. There was a cabinet and closet as well as a few other things that he could use for himself. The walls around his home were not that high and were actually surrounded with trees and actually had some form of fire barrier, so it would not be easily reached by fires just in case wildfires did break out. And while there was no lake, there was a well-placed plot nearby that he could use to grow anything or turn into a vegetable garden or more. All in all, the house was certainly worth living in, and since it was connected to a bank of solar mirrors to provide energy to the house, it was not connected to the power grid of LA, so there was less chance of him being forced to pay a power bill. And he did have access to a nearby spring of water, so he did not have to be connected directly to the water distribution system of the city. And thus he did not have to pay taxes or anything of the sort while he was there. All he had to do was buy food and supplies, and coupling it with his Hiroshin jutsu, he could move from the city to here in no time. The lights were also the kind that seemed to be more economical in power, so he could use less power, and since the location was windy enough, he did not have to rely on air conditioning, unless it was steaming hot. Even then, the air conditioning seemed to be top-notch and also designed to do more with less power. His own connection to the TV was possible due to the fact that Batman had somehow given him a private satellite link to the watchtower that allowed him to watch the news and other media channels to boot. As soon as he was done examining his new home, the blonde had to admit that he was going to enjoy living here, and he was going to set up several posts in the inner area which he could use as mediums to create a genjutsu to hide his place better. All he had to do was push in some of his chakra to activate the seals he would carve in that would create the genjutsu. There was also the fact that the house was given a form of terrain masking field by Bruce to keep it from being seen by cameras owned by regular people, even by military forces and intelligence services. It did have a connection to the highway but was made to a simple dirt road to nowhere, or so people thought. It was going to be a bit hard for him to live in one place again, since it had been a while since he had resided in one place ever since he adopted a mobile nomadic lifestyle. As he entered the house, he was pleased since the place was currently well aired and he enjoyed the cool air in his place. He took out his scrolls and moved to the rooms that were the best places to unload his stored away gear. Once he did what he needed with his gear, he headed down to the living room and decided to open up his laptop, connect his USB modem, and also plug in the latest security unit to keep his IP address hidden. It was one of the things Batman suggested for extra privacy. Batman had also insisted they learned how to drive and had been given a simple SUV for his transportation needs in and out of the house area. Batman also mentioned that he had convinced Bruce to set up a small warehouse under Wayne-Tech that could be where Naruto could go to from his home to get into the city to do his usual rounds. The warehouse also happened to be where he could be teleported to the watchtower when he needed to be there. He had not gone there just yet since he was getting used to this place. Once he was done with logging on, he decided to get some leftover work done and then head off to meet with his boss Carolyn, who was no doubt going to give him a very loud verbal lashing for not reporting in on the allotted time for the rest of the week. Once he had gotten back from the league meeting, he had spent the rest of his months handling the loads, and while he now had plenty of money in his pockets, he decided to earn more on the side. He did not tell the league he wrote perverted novels for a living, no sense letting them know, plus he had no idea just how Diana and Shara would react to the news of his writing choices. But if his experience with women was anything to go by, it would either be all right and funny, or an open invitation to the highway to hell. He loved that song a lot and wondered why no one ever got to listening to that classic. That was when he decided to have some fun and listen to his favorite music. This included J-pop and rock music which he understood and found to be fun. But that was balanced by some of his own Western favorite music which was pure, what was it again? Oh yeah, rock and rock heavy metal. He had amassed a serious CD collection over the years and even had those MP3s stored in his computer. And right now, he was listening to one of his favorite bands, one called Atreyu and a song he liked a lot since it resonated with him, that song being none other than Honor. Ah, life is good. Well, I am happy for you, Naruto, and at least despite some of their culture that surprises me, at least these guys know how to make good music. Got ya. They said I was supposed to have a housewarming party or something like that. Never had one before back home, so I have no idea why you need to warm up a house. Kind of curious how it will turn out when it happens though. You ever tried looking up in that thing you call the internet what that term meant yet, Naruto? That might answer your question right off the bat. Nah, I like to be surprised. Anyway, I should get this over and done with, and say hello to my boss and see how the books are doing. Right, and then you have to play catch up with her too, I take it. The only response Kurama got was a laugh which only served to confirm what he suspected his partner had in mind. The Biju found the fact that his partner was getting used to working with a team again amusing, and it also had a feeling that considering his partner's history with the opposite sex, there was going to be a lot of drama involved later on in the future.